Progress.
Thank you. Good morning. Welcome to the Palo Alto Architectural Review Board, regular meeting of Thursday, May 1st, 2025. It is now 8:35. We are beginning about 5 minutes late this morning. We appreciate your patience. So first of all, we'd like to get a call to order. Well, this is the call to order. We'd like to get a roll call, please.
Chair Rosenberg,
Present.
Vice Chair Chen,
Present.
Board Member Adcock,
Present.
Board Member Balte,
Present.
Board Member Hirsch.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. At this time, we open the floor for public comment. Anyone who wishes to speak on something that is not on the agenda has a chance to speak now. If you have something that will be on the agenda and we'll be discussing that later, you will get your time to speak for that later. So at this time, anyone not on the public agenda, you would have 3 minutes. Do we have any raised hands or public speaker cards?
I have no request to speak.
Perfect. All right, agenda changes, additions, deletions for this meeting.
No changes planned.
Perfect. All right, then I'll hand it back over to you, Stephen, for our city official reports. Thank you.
All right, well, good morning. Let me share my screen here. So here we are at the 1st of May. So we have some upcoming and recently submitted items that were detailed in the staff report packet. So those are also on the screen. For our May 15th meeting, we're tentatively planning for 3 items. So 2 of which would be projects, 340 Portage Road, which is a master sign program, and 180 El Camino, which would be cedar and sage facade upgrades. And kind of closing that chapter, if you will, for the 25-26 work plan. And since the last meeting, we did have 1 recently submitted item. That is 975 Page Mill Road. So that would be a minor architectural review board review for some renovations to an existing structure and a conditional use permit for an alcohol use on site. We have some planned absences for some of these upcoming meetings. Those are detailed on the screen. Strongly encourage that if there's any other absences, direct that either to my or Veronica's attention. And lastly, we do have some updates. So going to council on May 5th, we have the 4075 El Camino Way project. And we are having, since we are in the month of May, the Architectural Review Board Award Ceremony, May 29th from 5 to 7 p.m. here at City Hall. We have the open recruitment that just closed yesterday for the 3 vacancies on the Architectural Review Board. Interviews are tentatively scheduled for May 27th. And we do have a tentative date for June 2nd with council for a proclamation recognizing departing board members and commissioners for the various boards with the city. And with that, I can entertain any further questions.
I actually do have a question on that in regards to timing. So by June 2nd, they expect to have new board members.
June 2nd is just the proclamation for the outgoing. Interviews are scheduled for the 27th. So within that time, of course, taking the oath of office and filing the paperwork. So those items could potentially be accomplished between that time frame. So
okay. The reason I'm asking is as I will be missing 6-5, curious if my last meeting as chair is going to be 5:15 or if it will jump all the way to 7:3. So if we have an answer on that, great. If we do not, that's fine. Just curious about that.
So on that, the reorganization or say like the elections of chair and vice chair would occur with the new composition of the board. So following the full attendance of that. That is detailed in the bylaws. So
perfect. So that's likely going to end up being closer to that 7:3 date or so. Okay.
And
perfect.
It could potentially be pushed out. So yeah, more than likely at that date. So.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And that goes for our departing board members as well, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. All right. Anything else from you, Stephen?
Don't believe so.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Any of my fellow board members have any questions for Stephen before we jump into the action items? Yeah, good to go. Okay. All right, then we'll start with action item number 2, which is, excuse me one second. The wrong page, excuse me. Apologies. I was like, why is that not there? Okay. It's a public hearing quasi judicial for 3950 Fabian Way. It's a request for a minor board level architectural review for exterior modifications to an existing 32,500 square foot 2-story commercial building. The project includes revisions to the facade, site modifications, and demolition of a portion of the north end of the existing building, and construction of a new approximately 4,400 square foot addition to the north side. The project also includes a request for conditional use permit for change of use to a private education to accommodate the girls' middle school. Recommendation: the staff recommends that the Architectural Review Board take the following actions. 1, consider the project exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act in accordance with CEQA guidelines. 2, recommend that the Director of Planning and Development Services approve the project based on the ARB findings attachment B and subject to the conditions of approval attachment C. So.
If I may jump in here, this is my office's project, so I will recuse myself.
Perfect.
I think it's fine if I'm in the back room, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Good luck.
Perfect. Thank you. So at this time, we'll ask the remaining members for disclosures and if they have visited the site. Lucia, would you like to start?
I visited the site last time, but not this time.
I visited the site this time and I have nothing to disclose.
I visited the site recently and I have nothing else to disclose.
I visited the site the first time and have nothing to disclose.
Great. All right, with that, we'll hand it over to staff.
Good morning again. So here we are with the second hearing of this item. Just to orient ourselves a little bit, we have the project location. So this is in the Adobe Meadow Park neighborhood of Palo Alto. So it's right off of East Charleston Road and adjacent to San Antonio Road as well. There are some adjacent land uses of a private high school to the north, or actually it would be the east. And we have an office spaces surrounding a community center as well as single family residences to the rear of the property. This previously came before the Architectural Review Board on November 21st in 2024. And at that time, it was reviewed for some building modifications to an office of a private middle school. And that included, say, a fenced outdoor area, a new gymnasium. The previous iterations were a little bit smaller. It's now coming in around 4,444 square feet. And we have some addition of skylights and 10 classrooms and shared spaces of the conversion of the office building on the interior. As noted in the project description, this requires a conditional use permit to allow the change of use from the office to the private middle school, and they are requesting an enrollment up to 240. If we want to orient ourselves a little bit further, here's some existing elevations of the office building and what's proposed. Some sections with a new addition, which would be the gymnasium in gray. So back to that previous meeting with the Architectural Review Board, there were around 5 notable comments around bicycle parking, skylights, balcony connection, walkways, and color and materials. And I'll walk through those items and the applicant's response and revision in the plans. So for bicycle parking, there was some board members that had suggested that bicycle parking be relocated to the front of the building to improve circulation and connection to that Fabian Way. So here's the previous iteration and the currently proposed plan highlighted in yellow with that bicycle parking in the front of the building. There was at the last meeting a suggestion to explore some skylights to provide more lights, notably in the interior stairwells. So here's the roof plan of the previous submittal. And highlighted in yellow are the new skylights for those 2 stairwells on the project. There was suggested a balcony connection that had previously served the office, which is now proposed as a classroom, and a suggestion to have that balcony connection serve the faculty lounge. So here's the previous iteration, and that closed door now to the classroom is open in the faculty lounge. And lastly, actually, there's one more, so not lastly yet. We have walkways. The previous submittal had a sidewalk that ended, if you will, in the middle of the parking lot, highlighted in yellow here. There was some, safety concerns raised about the flow of people walking to and from the parking lot and around the building. It was suggested to investigate whether the applicant could continue that sidewalk around the perimeter of the entirety of the building. So with the new plans, the sidewalk is continued around the exterior and there's no dead ending. And lastly, we have some suggestions that by at least one board member to consider expanding the proposed color scheme of the new gymnasium that's detailed in the plans of that blue and yellow color to the rest of the building of the office. The applicant did respond that the new colors would remain on the addition and the existing building would retain its colors and materials as currently presented. So that is to help reduce the project cost. This also, we've wrapped up our environmental analysis of the project. It was a pretty heavy transportation analysis component. It did ultimately find that there were less than significant impacts. This is going under a class 32 categorical exemption with CEQA guidelines section 15332 for urban infill. And just a little note on that transportation analysis, there is an anticipated modifications for Fabian Way with a South Palo Alto Bikeways demonstration project. So that would introduce protected bikeways on Fabian Way, and travel lanes in both directions would be reduced to 1 lane with a middle turn lane provided. So that is currently funded, and it's anticipated that those upgrades would occur. So the project was analyzed to see if there's any impacts with that on the turning in and the circulation of the site. The applicant has also submitted a draft transportation demand management plan, and that is currently under review and will be, as detailed in the staff report, conditioned for approval. So on to the recommendation here. As noted previously, this is to consider the project exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act in accordance with CEQA guidelines section 15332, and recommend that the Director of Planning and Development Services approve the project based on the findings in attachment B and subject to the conditions of approval in attachment C. And I do want to note that we have the city's consultant, the W-Trans, that conducted the transportation analysis online. If there are any questions regarding the analysis that surrounded the project and anticipated impacts. And with that, I can entertain any further questions.
Great, thank you so much. Does any member of the ARB have questions for Stephen or any staff? Minchi, do you have anything? Myself neither. All right, so with that, we'll go on to the applicant presentation. You may approach the podium. You'll have 10 minutes to speak.
Morning. Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. My
Yeah,
name
and you
is
can
Monique.
adjust that microphone if you need to. There you go.
Is that better? Okay. My name is Monique Wood with CAW Architects. I'm joined by Song Lee with CAW as well. And I'm afraid this might be a little bit of a duplication because Stephen did such a good job of outlining our presentation. So we'll talk about some of the same components. You can go ahead. In terms of the building, I think all of us are very familiar with the building at this point. This is the north end of the existing property. And you can see in our rendering the planned expansion that would showcase the gym at that north end of the building. Again, we have the 5 comments that were brought up at the last ARB presentation, and we wanted to address each individual one. In terms of the biking, the bike parking. So originally, all of the bike parking was at the back corner of the property. And and there was also the comment about the walkway extending around the building. We took those to heart. And in the new proposed plan, we have maintained some parking at the back of the property, but we have located 16 parking spaces at the front. By code, we're required to have a total of 48. We have 16 at the front, about 30 in the back corner, and we actually have 2 that are located inside of the enclosed fenced area as well. Historically, the school has only seen between 6 and 10 bike riders. The demographic is typically dropped off by car. And so we feel that the 16 at the front of the property will more than accommodate the current load. The walkway, you can see, extends all the way around the property. So if there were to be additional users and they needed to use the back portion of the bike parking zones, they could walk their bike all the way around the building on the pathway. And there's even a striped crossing across the parking lot drive aisle that will access that back parking area. In terms of the exterior colors, as Stephen noted, the existing building, our intent is still to maintain the existing color as a cost savings, but also it's an integral color concrete. And so we want to maintain that finish and maintain the accent colors only at the new addition. But on the next slide, as you can see, the existing color of the building is something that will carry through and be coherent with the new addition. And the accent color is just only a portion of the new addition. So we feel that it's a coherent palette for the overall view of the building. In terms of the floor plans, just a reminder of the first floor plan. As you can see, the majority of the spaces have exterior direct access to windows, so they get natural light directly. There are a couple of spaces on the interior, including a library and classroom spaces. And if you go to the next slide, not only do we have the skylights, but we also have floor openings that will bring natural light from those skylights directly through to the first floor. So all of the internal spaces will get access to natural light as well. And in addition to, you can see the blue squares are the prior skylights. We have added the orange, or I guess they're sort of a purple color, 2 new skylights, 1 at each of the stair towers. And so there will be new skylights over each of those stairs. Yes, and just a reminder, the new addition of the gymnasium, we are aiming to meet our FAR of 0.5 with the new addition. That square footage is offset by the openings that we are making in the second floor plan. And that also helps us with just getting the light down into that lower level. So we are meeting the FAR of 0.5. And they correspond with each other, square footage. Is there anything else? No, I think that's actually our last slide. So we're happy to answer any questions that you might still have.
Great, thank you so much. If you don't mind remaining at the podium for just a little longer. At this time, we're going to hold any questions to the actually, you may sit for just a moment. We're going to hold any questions for the applicant until after public comment. You will also have a chance for rebuttal after public comment. Are there any public comments that have come in regards to this project? I know that we got one online via email.
There is one raised hand on Zoom.
Perfect. To the public commenter, please state and spell your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. So my name is Richard Hyde, Hyde. And I am the property owner at 3919 Bibbit Drive, which immediately abuts the property at 3950 Fabian, right, where the girls' middle school is proposed to be. I just wanted to note that the fence between our property and 3950 is quite old, and perhaps 30% of the posts are now rotted, and the fence definitely needs to be replaced. My understanding when the fence was originally installed was that when the commercial buildings were put in, the owners of the commercial buildings or the contractor put the fence in. But really nobody alive on the street remembers exactly what happened. So we don't know if the fence is on the commercial property side or on our side or right down the property line. But I just wanted to take a moment to note that it does need to be replaced. And that should probably look into, and while the construction is going on at 3950, that would be the ideal time for the fence to be replaced. That's my comment. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Hyde. On that note, we have an opportunity for the speaker to rebut the public comment. So if you guys have any thoughts specifically related to the fencing on that back line, we'd love to hear them now. And just for the public record, that was actually in the same person who emailed the public comment in. So we covered that base as well. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Christine Fairless. I'm the head of school at the Girls Middle School. And thank you for the comment, and we will absolutely take that into consideration as we move forward with the project.
Great. Thank you very much. With that, we have closed the public commentary. Veronica, there's nobody else, correct?
Correct, just the one.
Perfect. So at this time, public public comment is closed. Applicant rebuttal is now closed. So now we can turn the ARB questions towards the applicant or to staff. So to the applicant, you may want to come up to the podium for us to have a few questions for you. Thank you. Who'd like to kick us off? Peter, David? Let's go with David.
I'd like to just clear up, because I'm the one who suggested additions to the color to the building, and I really didn't mean exterior. I meant it could be carried to the interior of the building, and I still would, later on, I'll speak to that. I thank you for this presentation. You know, I think it sort of ties up little loose ends, and that's about all that you really need to think about on this project. But if you would clarify exactly where the yellow is in your exterior color, because I think it's a little.
It's actually the window surround. So you can see the little fin that sticks out around the window.
Oh.
That is the yellow accent.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a quite small
And
accent.
Stephen, do you mind pulling that up by any chance, if that's a possibility? There's one of the renderings in your presentation, I believe, showed it quite well. And I'm holding up the, I'm going to just talk for a minute so the Zoom gets to me at some point. So I'm holding up the materials board right now as well. We do have this in the chambers. There we go. Perfect. Thank you to the camera lady. So that's the yellow color over here. And then there's the blue. So that blue is the majority color and the yellow is really only the fin surround. Is that accurate?
Correct.
How about
ahead,
on A 4.00, there's a yellow that seems to be over the front door, the recessed area there that is at the entry.
There we go.
Is that the face of the
It's a-
overhanging canopy?
Correct.
Okay,
correct.
and that would turn the corner and go back to the building then probably as
Yes.
well?
Correct. Correct.
So it's just on those new elements only really here that you're using yellow?
Exactly. In
Okay.
very limited
Mhm.
color. It's
Yeah.
just a little pop of color.
No, it's really nice.
Mhm.
Yeah, thanks. And just to thank you for the couple of additional skylights, which is also one of my concerns. So you've got plenty of penetrations there and it's perfect for the getting light down below.
It's important to the users as well.
Yes, I think so. And the bicycles, which you didn't mention that the bicycles there in both areas are going to be retained. So you sort of split them into two pieces, right?
Correct, correct.
So that makes sense to get a certain amount of them up front. If you have less people coming with bikes, the first people there will get the front locations and the others will have to take it to the back.
Exactly.
Those were basically the two areas that I'll come back if there's any other question.
Thank you, David. Appreciate that. Yingshi, you want to go ahead?
I have a couple of questions on the new bicycle parking as well. So it seems like there is fence and gate surrounded by it. May I know the height of it, the height of the fence
The height
and
of
what it looks like?
Is there an elevation of that?
We're trying to find an elevation right now.
Yeah, bear with us. I'm about to share my screen.
So these, right? L1, 7, L104. Oh, they don't have that shown. This is the enclosure though. This is not the bike parking. Apologies, we're looking for confirmation of that right now.
Not a problem. It always takes a minute to find exactly what we're looking for. I will also note that on sheet A 0.20, for anyone following along that site plan, we can see in that #1 drawing, in that bottom corner, it does look like the bike parking is detached from the actual property line. So again, I would follow up to Yingshi's question, how this fencing interacts with the neighbor fencing. So when we get the drawings up.
All right, let me share my screen here.
This is completely detached and the fencing is outside of that, yeah. Yeah, the back parking area is completely detached from the neighbor fence. It's its own fence enclosure.
All right, so we have here the back parking.
It doesn't indicate height.
And then we also have the fencing details here.
Yeah, we could, is she on the, okay.
Hi, I can jump in if that's helpful.
Please, and if you don't mind stating your
Georgia Lee,
name
Young
and-
Landscape Architect. So
Perfect.
the bike parking fencing is intended to be chain link, and the back one connects to the existing fence, just kind of tees into it, and then uses the existing fence on the back sides, and then the front bike parking area is a little bit sloped, so there would be a little retaining wall on the back side of that front bike parking area, and the fence would surround it, if that makes sense.
And could you please clarify the height of it
6 feet.
for both the front and the back?
Yeah, 6 feet total, so it would be, yes, correct.
I also have a question regarding to the trash enclosure. So is there a specific reason you have the deep overhang for that structure? For the trash enclosure?
Yeah, that was, in our research, it was Palo Alto Code recommendation to overhang half of the height of the trash enclosure. So yeah, we have like 2 feet overhangs to protect water, wet trash from the water.
Okay, could staff clarify that? Because is it required to have a trash closure to be covered, or once it's covered, it has to have certain overhang?
Yes, short answer, yes. And the proposed design was approved by Zero Waste.
Peter, would you like to go?
Yes, if I could, please. Thank you for your presentation. I'd like to follow up on the bicycle parking and fencing. So if I'm looking at the landscape plans sheet with the elevations, that's Sorry. Sheet L 1.03, on the top, there's two elevations of fencing, 6 foot high with slats, and you said it was a chain link fence. Is that what would be on the street, right next to the sidewalk at the front of the building?
The one at the front of the street is the chain link, right? The bike parking enclosure is a chain link. This fencing detail is for the enclosure at the back, at the west side of the campus.
Is there a detail of the fencing at the front of the campus where the bicycles will be parked along the street?
Don't believe so. Don't believe so at this time.
I'm looking at it. So the detail with the retaining wall 2 feet high or so is detail 1 on the same page. Maybe could we get the landscape architect to confirm that, please? They did these drawings.
So can you repeat the question?
What does the fence look like at the street?
It's a chain link fence at the street.
What does it look like? Is there an elevation of that fence?
There is not an elevation of that fence.
Okay, would it be similar to the ones in the back?
Correct. Oh, no, wait, the back enclosing the outdoor space or the back bicycle parking?
The
Would be
bicycle park.
Same as the bicycle parking, yeah.
So I'm looking on the drawing, it shows not chain link, but a series of vertical slats. Are those just plastic slats stuck into the chain link then?
No, that fence encloses the outdoor space
I'm
that's
confused.
adjacent to the building.
So there is no elevations of any of the bicycle parking fencing?
Correct.
Okay, so I just want to be really crystal clear. You're proposing a chain link fence surrounding bicycles along Fabian Way at the very front of the building.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you. My second question has to do with the rationale for locating the trash enclosures to the right back corner and the bicycles to the left. Is there a reason those two couldn't be switched?
Is there a reason why you can see?
So originally in our site plan, we had a trash enclosure on the south corner, but because of the budget restriction, we didn't want to disrupt the south south part of the parking lot. So the trash enclosure has to have a accessible. So we moved every accessible like parking space and then trash enclosure to the north side of the parking lot. So all the site work will be concentrated on the north side.
I see. So it's just to do with construction practicality to keep everything on one side of the site? But you are constructing a bicycle enclosure at the south side, at the other side.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to do something back there.
It's more of a grading issue that in order to get an accessible path to the trash enclosure, it's much more efficient to do it at the top of the property, at the north end of the property. And that is also where the accessible parking is. So they share an accessible pathway over to
So
the
let me
building.
understand this. The accessible pathway is to the accessible parking spaces,
As well as to the trash
but the
enclosure.
trash enclosure itself requires accessibility,
Yes.
ADA accessibility. Is that
It
correct, Steph?
does, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that.
And the main
clarification.
entrance of the building is on the north end. So we wanted to maintain the accessible parking on the north end of the campus.
And Peter, if you don't mind, I want to jump in here really quick. And if you don't mind,
Absolutely.
zoom out just a little bit, Stephen, and hold it still for a second. I'm about to draw on this thing. All right, if you zoom out a little bit more, please. I just want to clarify the fencing, right? So over here in the front and over here in the back at the two bicycle areas, we have chain link fencing.
Correct.
Over here, if I'm understanding correctly, that is where this fancier fencing will be, and that's sort of surrounding that back portion. It's to the inside of the sidewalk, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you. That's
no
good
problem.
clarification. Yeah,
Thank
thanks.
you. All right.
So if I could then, in the same vein, if we all go to sheet A 2.01, that's the main floor plan of the building.
Sidewalk is on the outside of the fence. Yeah.
So if
My apologies.
I
Could
could
you
get your
repeat that?
attention. If we're looking at the main floor plan of the building, could you explain to me, please, how the trash is brought from the interior of the building to the trash bins? And the same direction, if someone parks their bicycle in the back corner, how that student would then get into the school? What's the path of travel?
So I'll start with the bike parking at the back. There is a crosswalk that is striped in the parking drive aisle, and the sidewalk continues all the way around on to both the southern end of the building and the northern end of the building.
So the student would essentially walk across the entire diagonal of the building, around one side or the other to get there. And there is a sidewalk now, but it is a pretty far walk
Oh,
around. Is that correct?
there is a gate in the middle of the west fencing, so they can come in through the gate.
And once they've come through the gate, that's the purpose of my asking you to look at the floor plan. How do they get into the building? Where's the door in the building aside from the main entry?
There's a gym door from the back courtyard, so they can come in
So
through the gym.
students would be allowed to come into school through the gym door?
Yeah, we discussed with the school, and in the short period of time, they're gonna open all the doors and students can come in.
Can the students enter through the student center in the bottom left? That orange block on A
Yeah.
2.01.
That's a second entrance as well that will be open in the morning and pick up and drop off.
Okay, and then how does the janitorial staff bring the trash out? Where do they wheel their bins?
They can exit through any of the same doors from the building and walk around the pathway, the sidewalk, all the way around the perimeter of the building, and then take the crossing across the drive aisle up to the northern trash enclosure.
So effectively through either the student center or the gymnasium?
Well, they could exit from any of the exterior doors and walk to the sidewalk, either through the enclosed outdoor area or directly out from the front entrance or the staff area exit at the southern end. But all of those would have access to the pathway.
I'm
sidewalk.
sorry, I'm being so dense here. I just
No,
don't
that's fine.
understand. As I look at the building, I only see two exits and entrances off the common hallway circulation area. One is the main front door and the other is on the other side by the street under that balcony above it. I don't see any entrance or exit in the back of the building except for through another space.
Correct.
Is that really your intention?
Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you for that clarification then.
To clarify that a little bit more, Ken, the point was made that you could possibly go through the gymnasium if you were taking the garbage out of the building, and that would be a closer path to the garbage area rather than have to go all the way around the building. Is that, it looked to me like the maintenance staff would probably choose that as a quickest way to get there.
That is one pathway. Obviously, the maintenance staff will be in all spaces. So if they're cleaning up things in that corner of the campus, they could exit directly out that door.
Okay, and then I did understand you to say you only have 6 students right now riding their bicycles to school?
Correct. And historically, it hasn't gone over 10 students that ride bikes.
So this is a rhetorical question, but why do I find that hard to believe? In Palo Alto, I see the sidewalks jammed with students riding to school. Is there a particular reason Girls Middle School doesn't attract students by bicycle?
It is the data that was given to us by the school.
Maybe the head of school could answer
Sure,
these questions,
yeah.
please. I find it hard to believe you wouldn't want to encourage bicycle riding to school as much as possible, especially at this
Yeah.
new location.
I'd like to add to that, where the location of your school right now is on the other side of 101, right? So is that right?
And it's on the Palo Alto
No, it's
side.
on the
we're
same
on this,
side.
we're on this side of
Oh, it
101.
is?
It's right down on that in front.
It's
But
located
it
at-
is closer to 101.
Right. It's located at
Your present school,
344.
where you are now?
We're at
West.
3400 West Bay Shore.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
So we're on this side.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know why we don't have more kids riding bikes. I mean, we definitely encourage physical activity. I think we have about 25 to 30% of our students come from Palo Alto, and the rest are dispersed across the peninsula. So there are a lot of families that do drive in and carpool. So as a percentage of students from the city of Palo Alto is probably 25 to 30% of those students that do bike. So,
So
No.
that's about 50 students, just doing numbers, who live in Palo Alto approximately.
is that right? Yeah, that's about right.
Ballpark,
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, well, I just want to press that issue because I'm not entirely happy with the way you're doing the bicycle parking. And I'd like to think you'd really want to encourage that. It's a
Mhm.
good thing for the students and for our society as a whole. Thank you for answering the question.
Yeah.
No other questions.
Great, and I'll wrap up. I've got some pretty minor, I hope, nitpicky things. While we are on the subject of bicycles, noticing that the front bicycle parking, if you don't, yeah, perfect. If we can zoom in on the front one. Perfect, hold still. Its only entrance is really in that direction, correct? So it's just the one gate in and out, and it's, what did you say, 10 parking, bicycle parking spaces here?
16.
16 here, okay, beautiful. And then, okay, that's, just wanted to make sure I had that understood. I have a couple questions related to the floor plans. They're pretty minor, somewhat nitpicky, just making sure I understand them. So Steve, if you don't mind jumping down to A 2.01. Beautiful, thank you. So again, just to clarify, that bottom left student center area, they're going to be able to walk out of here and then into the courtyard and then down and out of the gate and get to the bicycle parking.
Correct.
Perfect. Okay. And then I noticed two things. One, the kiln is on the hallway, and I'm sort of curious why. Is that ceramics related kiln space? It's just sort of to me, it feels a little bit like a safety hazard, you know, taking fragile things and potentially sort of hot things in and out of a room that's on the hallway feels a little bit more worrisome. So that's why I wanted to ask about that.
Yeah, this kiln space only for the teacher use. Student doesn't use the kiln. So teacher takes all the student work and then go to the kilns. And she usually doesn't go back and forth during the school day. She uses after school or on the weekend. So we agree that the location is not the best, but yeah, as we develop, we can
Yeah.
consider relocating it.
Just, I've seen those racks of rolling ceramics things, and I'm like taking that out of the class, you know, as quick as possible is probably the safest. All right, beautiful. I also noticed in those metal ceramics area and in the wood shop, there were two areas that I just wanted to understand. It looks like there's a sort of deviation here in the wood shop, and then in the metal ceramic shop, there's a deviation here, sort of dividing the spaces. Was there a specific intent for that, or was that sort of existing structure that you guys are working with?
Yeah, there's definitely a brace frame in that location. So for metal shop, we use the small space as a storage space. And then for the wood shop, we have like glazing in between. So all the noise equipment is inside, so it doesn't go to whole school.
Great.
So it's a
And
noise.
I assume with your final plans, you'll have doors as
Yeah.
needed for storage if there is going to be a door there, and then again, a door in or out of that space as needed. Okay, perfect. Great, thank you. Up to the second floor, if you don't mind, and really sincerely appreciate the skylights. I believe that was one of my nitpicky things as well. Just wanted to ask, in some of these office spaces, are the doors on these office spaces have any glazing? Is there any sort of frosted glass? Is there a way that those offices can get some natural light in through the doorways, or are there going to be high transom windows in those offices? What's the plan?
Yeah, there will be side light for each doors.
Fabulous. Okay, that answers my question. All right, and then, sure thing. And I've got one more that I'm going to wrap up to. And again, this is me channeling Mr. David Hirsch for a moment here. I was looking at the exterior elevations, if we don't mind pulling them up. The concept that there's no need for additional color on the front because of cost. I'm curious if you guys thought about any potential for just simple paint, right? And if you don't mind going down to the front facade, not this one, that one right there. Okay. right? If you just did some simple striping, right, nothing major, but like it could be paint. And it would really draw the cohesiveness of this building across. The thing that sort of, again, maybe this is less posed as a question, but is this something that you guys would consider, just getting small moments of color that maybe translate across the front facade, just on Fabian, understanding the costs are tight, it doesn't need to go anywhere else, but something that just brings that color across? Because right now, when it's only here, it really is emphasizing the fact that this is an addition. So has there been any discussion of other potential ways to bring that color across? Cheaply, minimally, right? We don't need the whole thing painted yellow and blue.
Yeah, we discussed internally, like the soffit underneath the second floor, maybe have a color. But once we try to like stripe of the color, we feel kind of like we didn't look really, I don't know, yeah. So we studied the color integration, but it didn't satisfy us. So we had just the current
I mean,
elevation.
I'm not gonna, be a huge stickler on this, but I do feel like the answer provided that it's just not feasible due to cost feels like wasn't explored far enough. Small, subtle moments, I would really encourage that, even if it's on one end or an entrance to highlight something, right? There's the concept that the only color is at the addition is falling a little short for me. So I just encourage another pass at it, right? That's all we can do. All right, and I am done with my comments at this point. Yingxi, do you have any others?
Yeah, just one minor question regarding to the main entrance, the canopy. So you mentioned like the yellow color will be on the edge of the canopy. How about the underneath?
The underneath of the canopy? We could certainly consider using one of the accent colors there as well.
Thank you.
It's new construction, so we can make
Thanks.
it.
So it's more like different colors instead of, or will you propose like different materials, say wood slides or anything like that?
Is this a metal overhang? Yeah. No, it would all be one consistent material, but we would have to identify what the color would be on the
Gotcha.
underside.
Thank you.
Right, with that, I believe we are done. You may please be seated. This closes the public portion of the meeting, and now we will have an internal ARB discussion. I'll kick us off. I think that my biggest concerns is just color would be nice, right? Just a little bit, but again, not something I'm gonna hold too firm to. My biggest problem is really that front bicycle parking being a 6-foot tall chain link fence. So I personally would like a little bit more review of that.
I'm gonna talk to you though, Kendra, about the color on the building, because I think you brought up a good point. And as I look at it now and think about it more, you've got to do something to the entirety of the building to let us know that it's not a office building. It's now a school. It's now a special school with a special program and colors, and it's revered and loved by the town. And you're leaving it just gray concrete. And I don't buy the cost thing. I know you're on a tight budget, but you've got to be able to find something. I think you need to push a little more creativity into this to find a way, like Board Member Rosenberg was saying, a stripe, a color, a band, paint the styrated pattern on it, but it could use something just to tie it together. Your students and your families will be really happy if you give them something that they're happy to look at every day. This is a kid's image is formed by this thing for the rest of their lives. They're going to remember what that school looked like. Certainly I do. The middle school I went to was this big brick building and I could never forget it. You're showing them an office building. You're asking the families to spend $30 million, I understand, to do this, and you can't paint the front of the building. I don't buy that. So I'm going to support what Board Member Rosenberg was saying, that you should do something. So continue what you're saying, Kendra, but I just wanted to chime in.
Appreciate that, Pete.
Can I chime in a little bit?
Please, I know you're our color
the
guru
original-
here. I think it's your fault that I'm thinking this in the first place.
Yeah, I'm the original colorist on this that requested more integration into the school. Well, I think, I feel a little less inclined to make it the exterior changes that are being suggested, and that you carry it basically inside, which is where the students are going to be going. you know, and that they should, for example, it would be simple enough to do the fronts of the entire kind of, what do they call them? The student storage areas within the corridor there. The faces of those could be one or two or alternately. The recesses that are the places they will sit down casually, and the walls of those spaces could be different than the face of the wall of the. So I think it, you know, we don't comment usually too much about interiors because our responsibility is more the outside. But I think that's an opportunity for definitely for increasing the use of the color on the inside of the building. I kind of think that by the time you add little things to the outside, it's not so bad, in my opinion, to look at a building like this because in some ways, it already looks a bit like a school. You know, it's the bigger divisions of a industrial use or commercial use building. You know, like this is not so bad. And the material itself kind of leads you to make a decision like this. Where do you put color on the outside? I think it's difficult. So I would leave the choice to you. And if you do that, then maybe you come back to a committee and say, we've studied it, and, you know, and this is what we've decided. But inside is really an opportunity. That's what I have to say about the color.
Yes.
I've got to think, David, that the interiors are still, they've got quite a bit of refinement to go.
Yeah.
And so I'm positive they're going to do all kinds of
Sure.
wonderful colors on the
Yeah.
inside.
Yeah.
But what do you really think about the facade on Fabian? Don't you think there's some creative effort they could put into that existing tilt up or precast
Well, you know,
concrete thing?
you mentioned actually the last time you commented, because I said, how are they going to treat the interior walls that come to the outside?
Right.
That are, because it's all open about down there, really, right? On the perimeter, the support is,
Sort of the concrete structural grid.
but there is a grid that's going to come facing that. The individual rooms do not follow the grid exactly. Is that true?
I don't know if that's true or not. You're jogging a memory on that, though.
I don't remember either.
It looks like they do on the plans, though, David.
Oops. Okay, so, well, I don't know where, you know, because those materials have been chosen to work with the existing building facade.
Yeah, I guess the question more really is, do you think there's just small things they could do to make the facade, the existing facade, just jump out a little bit more or have a bit of a unique appearance? Or do you think it really is okay the way it is?
It's also possible that there's going to be some sort of sign across the front, right? And I'm seeing heads nodding. So the signage itself may also have some of that. I wish that would have been shown if that was sort of clearly defined at this point. But just something to tie it together, I think, is what this is sort of lacking at this point.
Yeah, I do agree. To carry out some pop-up colors to the existing building would be better, and so that it will not make the addition part looks like an add-on to the existing office building.
And circling back to the bike comments, if we're done with color for a moment, I would just say that a 6-foot tall chain link fence right in the front of this building is a little bit alarming. I do believe that I was the one pushing for the bike parking in the front to begin with, because that safety concern of the kids going through the biking paths was a little alarming. Stephen, would you mind running back to the site plan one more time for me? I'm sorry, I keep jumping back to that. Just 2 items of food for thought. Whether or not this is going to work feasibly is a different question, but right here, please. Thank you, Stephen. We have all seen the lovely striping of green down all the streets. And I should have asked this as a question, I apologize, but I'd just like to put out there, if there's any sort of potential for a green striping there to get to that bike path, I would, encourage that. And then additionally, just the concept that it's possible to sort of stagger the timing right? So making this sort of 4D method of architecture that this is your staff. They'll all arrive first, right? So you're not worried about cars pulling in and out while kids are trying to get to the bike lanes, assuming that we do encourage more biking and that they're assuming that there's more than 10 bicyclists and that they do actually start using that back bike path. Just making sure that sort of the timing of who's going into these parking spaces is not the moms that are running late. It's not people that are, or dads. It's not people that are running late. Those people are going to keep going straight through and go this direction. The pulling in and out of the cars along that is what would be problematic for the bicyclists. So having some parking there that's really a little bit more stagnant at the time of arrival and departure, I think would be thoughtful. Okay. So just as a 2-second comment there. And then Peter, I believe you had some more thoughts about the chain link fence.
Well, the chain link fence is obviously disturbing, and I think you're not going to actually do that at the end. I can't imagine putting a chain link fence in the front of this beautiful building. But my concern really has to do with the logic of the site plan, because I think that the bicycle parking should be closer to the entrance of the building so the students can come in the front of the school, not sneak in the back. And I think the trash bins should be where the bicycle parking currently is in the back. And I think you should have some sort of entrance or exit from the building closer to the trash in that corner. If I look at where's the, Kendra, you could show it on the screen for me, but if you could put a doorway in that lower left corner of the building, if you go to sheet 2.01, it seems to me that if you had the pragmatic utility stuff, the trash enclosure and things in the back left corner, then you could come out through that corner of the hallway, which is closer to the elevator and stuff. And those functions are kept away from the front entry. The students, if you want to encourage them to ride their bicycle, don't make them walk another couple of minutes from the bicycle parking to the front of the building. And having just 16 spots in the front means the moment you have more than 16 kids, they're just going to be fighting over it, pushing and shoving. And the kids parking along the street are out of your control. They're sort of out on the street now. And I can't imagine that's what you really want. I would think you'd want the bicycle parking in a controlled place closer to the front door where you really can keep it, keep an eye on it, encourage it. Students will be concerned leaving their bike out in the very front even. It just doesn't seem like you've thought this through from the point of the bike riding students and from a point of trying to encourage bicycle riding. I thought when we suggested bringing the bike parking to the front, it was to put it very close to the front door so students would easily be encouraged to park because it's the quickest way to get into school. Instead, the students have to either walk around the entire building or come in some back entrances where you don't really have control of it. As I see it now, the staff has to wheel the trash through either one of the student spaces, which isn't likely, or through the gym or something like that. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, on buildings like this, you have a way for these utilities to be done independent of these functions. And I think when you think it through more thoroughly, you'll find that's the case. So I'd strongly encourage you to switch the back corners and see if you can rejigger that circulation. And then I think you'd find you don't need the bicycle parking up in the very front, but having it in the back proximate to where we're doing would save you some cost there.
Jump in and make an argument if I can. So I actually have some disagreement here. I think that the trash park in that location is more efficient. And I think that putting it by the gym as opposed to by the student center, right? The student center being down here, the bike parking to the student center adjacent makes a lot more logical sense. The trash parking here, additionally, with the 2 lanes of traffic, let's say you needed a big trash truck to get in there, they can back in that way and get back out again a little bit with more ease than I would say they could down there with that sort of odd corner. So for me, I have 0 issue with the trash up in that corner. I think it makes sense. I'm 0 opposition to it. I don't think moving the bike lane over there actually increases a lot. In fact, I think it's negative because having that juxtaposition to the student center does make sense to me. I do think there's going to be a lot of kids entering through that student center. I think that that's going to be sort of the vibe place to hang out before they get going to class, right? So they'll park their bike, they'll come in this way, and they're right in that student center right there. So to me, that feels logical. And I also appreciate that it's on the front end of the drive aisle versus the back end where everyone's switching lanes. There's a lot more going on here. There's the accessible parking. So to me, I'm going to argue that I think that those locations are good. And in defense of the applicant, I believe that I was the reason that I was pushing pretty hard for that bike parking up front because I didn't want the kids going down there at all. So I think that my original intent was to get the bike parking sort of all of it in that type of zone or something like that, and that there'd be no parking back there. Understanding that maybe historically, and I would dare to say that you probably have a lot of the reduction in the biking because of the location of where you are now. This is a much more bike-friendly area. Right near the JCC, there's a lot of kids that are going to have a little bit more accessibility from Palo Alto to this area. But again, understanding that you've got 50 students, maybe plus or minus, that are coming from Palo Alto, and maybe even if 50% of those kids bike, that's only 25, right? You're not going to have this huge influx of biking. So let's say that you double it and you go from 10 to 20. I do sort of worry that there'll be like 4 sad little bicycles over here in this space. So that being said, I would also, I just, in your defense, I understand why you put that there. But that chain link fence is really, it's got to be better thought out than that. Just having a chain link fence there is going to be problematic. And then I would also argue that let's say you do have 20, 25 kids, those last 5 kids are not going to want to come over here. They're just all going to try and cram their bikes in that front one. It's going to look a little bit more messy, should we say. I would lastly like to agree with Peter's argument for getting from the inside out to the trash center. You really sort of want something in that corner. But at the same time, the way that you've got the pathing is that even if you did come out through the gym here, coming down this way, you come down the ramp, then you circle back and you come all the way over here. So it's a little bit more, it's almost easier to just do that, right? Which makes sense. And the janitor's closet's right over in this zone. So I'm following the logic, right, is what I'm trying to say. I'm following the logic of everything. Is it ideal? No, I would like better access from those 2 corners, but I also can follow the logic of why you did what you did. So
I got to jump in.
please.
One is that chain link fencing is not beautiful. And I would think that if, cost issues on this kind of construction, you might consider a more sort of solid corner elements to the otherwise chain link fencing, and color wise, if it's black chain link fencing, it certainly is better than, and then if all of it was black, it wouldn't be as visually annoying, certainly not that much more costly. If the structure is a more solid element you can make something out of that, if you do it that way. Of course, we would all prefer something nicer, but generally speaking, bicycle enclosures are that way, but we're facing a street. So I would say that for the part that faces the street, it would be nice that it was a little bit better quality. And the other thing is that if there were the possibility, as suggested here, to get the bike a little bit closer to the front door, that would really be nice as well. It isn't a beautiful thing, no matter how much you do with it, really, but the bicycle portion of it. And it tends to get kids who, if they can't use the bike attachment that you can lock up to, it'll be bikes all over the place. And the green school, on Middlefield is a mess with a zillion bikes in there. Just, I don't know how they get in and out, the kids at the end of the day, or the beginning of the day, but definitely the end of the day is the big problem, getting your bike out of a place that's just loaded with bikes. So how you arrange that, I think, is kind of critical as well. But if it were a little bit bigger, it could accommodate maybe more of the real number of bikes that are going to come here. At this point, if it's really going to only remain the same number of bicyclists to the school, what the heck are you going to do with the one in the rear? It's a functional issue here that maybe it becomes a storage area for something, and I don't know if that's planned or whatever. But it's of less concern because the kids will go to the front space if it's available and the volume is increased a little bit. And if it is closer to the front door, the access with the paving, et cetera, could be arranged so that you could get from the bicycles to the front door of the building more easily than at present. which I think is a consideration that no matter what, you really have to arrange. At this point, it looks like you really ought to not have a gate that's right on the sidewalk to get into the bike parking. It ought to be inside in some way. So there's a little more thinking there. I don't know, maybe you could come up and comment on that if you have some thoughts. But in terms of the garbage storage, I kind of agree with the last comments on that it should stay sort of where it is. It seems to function better there with trucks backing up, coming around, backing up, going straight out. And with the other parking that is sort of adjacent to it, gives them more flexibility to get the garbage out of there. Getting the garbage to it, it's not the greatest, go through the gym, but the alternative of the front door, I guess, is the other possibility. And keeping it in the back corner, I think, is a good idea. So going back to the color in the front of the building, I just don't know. I think it's really something you have to decide on. You know, you're the designers of this building. I don't want to be in a position that the ARB pushes you into something that you really don't want to do on the front of the building. Unless you can find a reasonable place to do that. And I don't think just doing it on the front facade would be enough once you started that. You know, it won't be symbolically enough. In a way, you know, you approach this building sort of from the south end, you know, generally speaking, people won't be coming, I don't think so much. I don't know how they get to the school. But when you get to the school and you see the gym, and the gym sets the color of this, that sort of defines it. And then if you carry that on the inside, I think it could be enough here. But it's a decision I think you have to make based on what the comments have been. I would think that you would look to, if you were going to do something on the outside, you'd look to do something throughout the whole building then that sets it off. And you may not be able to afford to do that. It's an extra item. I don't know how you do it. And I don't think we really defined a way for you to do it. We just said it's an idea. So it's up to you, I think, to make a decision on that.
Yeah, I would agree to reconsider the front bicycle location, maybe to the front, the entry plaza would be a better solution. And if that is the case, then since it's more close to the main entry and close to the office where somebody always can watch it, maybe you might want to reconsider whether the 6-foot high fence is needed, or it could be lower, or just some kind of low wall that surrounded that area that make the entry plaza more interesting and more integrated to this whole area. And also, I don't have too much concern about the existing trash enclosure location. However, I think you need to think about the circulation, how it bring it from the inside to the outside, the entire circulation along how it works. As far as the exterior colors, I agree. I think it's necessary to bring some pop-up colors to the four sides of the building instead of just the front of the building, because we are now doing the theme park buildings, right? And also for the back of the building, that is where all the outdoor activities happen. So I think that more colors bringing up at the back is also important. So that's all my comments. Thank you.
Anything else, Peter?
Yeah, I wanted to sort of address, as I listened to everybody speak, and I think everyone's comments are good. I'm struck thinking that maybe I'm old fashioned, but buildings, especially schools, have front doors, entrances, and we should encourage the students to come every day through the front door into the school in a significant way. And we shouldn't carry the garbage out of the school through the front door. There's a symbolic, a cultural, and importance to that. And I think that's gotten lost in this. It seems to me that you've sort of responded to each comment and you've gotten so many from the city and the school and everybody all along. And it's sort of getting diluted. You had created a nice entry plaza. You have a very interesting looking canopy. You're preserving that wonderful flowering tree in the front. You're doing a bunch of things right. But now you're getting pushed into having the students come in every day through the student center, sort of coming in the back door. And you really don't have a way for the garbage to get out. And we now are putting this chain link fence or any kind of enclosure on the front of this school, takes away from the front of the building, the look of it. And these are small things, and each one is just a little piece, but big picture, you're losing that important element of a school, which is the entrance. Once a day for the lives of the kids to remember this. And so I don't think we can sit up here and tell you what to do. And I certainly want to see this project get pushed forward. But I think you've got some design work ahead of you to really capture and finish all that. And I don't know what to say. I mean, I agree again that you should do something on the facade of the building, probably on all sides. It shouldn't be expensive, but I think there's creative solutions there, but I'm not the architect. You guys have to think about that. And again, it has to be thought with that idea of creating this overall visual sense of what is a school? What does it look like to the community, to the students, to the families? And you're getting lost on that. I will say that I think the gymnasium addition is wonderful. It's a really neat looking form. It looks like a gym addition to a school. It's got a real character. The colors are nice. The way the windows are done is excellent. It fits the inside. I can see the function from the outside. So what you've done there is great, but you have to just think that thought process through a little bit more. So I don't know what we can say to you or how we can process this, but that's my basic thought, is that you don't want students coming in the back door every day. You don't want to bring the garbage out through the front door. So just think of those concepts. I would like to,
If I can, Peter, I have
Sure, go ahead.
one final comment for you on that front. As a lifelong Palo Alto resident, I'm not sure I've ever been in the front door of any of my schools. So we have sprawling campuses commonly in this city. And while this isn't a sprawling campus, you know, we walk in, I don't know what Palo Alto High School's front doors look like. I've never been through them. We always entered from the back or from the bike paths and things like that. So I personally don't have a strong objection to that in regards to the students coming in through the student center. Right.
lacking that experience doesn't make it okay, Kendra.
No, it's not that but it's the concept is that it's not that it's wrong. There's nothing bad here. There's nothing failing here. Having kids walk in through a student center where they're all hanging out and they gather and then they move on to class, I think is actually quite beautiful. So do the students need to walk in the absolute front doors every day? And I think the answer is no, they don't. My 2 cents on it, but I agree with the trash going through the
I
front
don't
door.
know.
is problematic.
My wife is a 8th grade English teacher. She stands at the classroom door every day to greet the students coming in. That's the front door to her classroom.
Her
and the
classroom.
Kids better go through that. Well, that's
Yes.
the symbolic small piece of what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
The principal should be standing at the front door. The head of school is nodding her head as every time I say this. She knows what I'm talking about. There's an importance to how you enter an institution. It really is.
If
I
that's
don't
the
need to
case,
say
then
anything
we
more.
should have, no, I agree. I hear you, but I'm saying if that's the case, then we need to have a strong front door presence and we should have brought that up last time.
Well,
but we
they do
didn't.
have, they have a front door presence. My comment is
No,
that it's getting
No, I
diluted.
disagree with that. I don't think they do.
I want to talk about this as well because you're monopolizing the conversation here between you. So it's okay. It's the way we do it. But
You've never monopolized a conversation, have you,
of
David?
course not. But I really actually didn't mention before because I think that again, it's really up to you, but that front plaza is kind of a definition of the front of the building here. And what concerns me a little bit is that it may be too much planted and not enough paving. You're really going to see the kids going out to be greeted by the bus, et cetera, that comes in here and around, you know, taking them wherever, and the personal cars that come into the driveway and are lining up to pick up the kids. But the kids will be out there en masse in the front of the building. Now we are suggesting even that the bicycles will be, you know, mostly reachable from the front door. And I think you have to look a little bit more about the plaza in the front, which is really a definition of the entry to this building, as well as the addition that you've put there, you know, the major form of the building that you've added to it, which is quite different than the rest of the building, you know, the solid piece of it. So I'm a little concerned looking at the landscape plan that there might be just too much landscape in some way and more required space for groupings of kids on the front of the building there.
Yesterday was a beautiful day when I was out there, and there's this wonderful old flowering plum or cherry, I couldn't tell, pink.
Mhm,
It's just such a spectacular marker for the
Mhm.
front entrance of a school.
mhm.
And they're preserving that, and they're going to celebrate that.
Yes.
And what Board
That's
Member
good.
Hirsch is suggesting and Board Member Chen are great ideas. Put some more paving, let it be a plaza by the entry. I think if you just put some uncovered bicycle racks, put a dozen, 15 spaces out there where kids can park and lock their bicycle, it's clearly safe and visible from the whole school. It saves you the money. You don't have to build then some other structure in the very front of the school. It checks a bunch of the boxes to just think of it as the entrance. Try to get the students to use it, the faculty, everybody. Uncovered bike parking also counts. If I could come back though, what I was going to do was give Stephen a little bit of a kick. We have to make 6 findings, and you're so courteous as to write what those findings would be for us. And yet when I read these findings, I'm afraid you're really not making an argument for why we meet these findings. And I think we should just do better than that. So I can give you an example. Finding number 3, the design is of high aesthetic quality, and we say the project uses high quality materials. We want to say why. So for example, we could say something like, the new addition is a bold form enhanced by strong colors that express its internal function while contrasting gracefully with the existing structure. To me, that's an expression of what quality design is. This is part of the public record, and we want to take it seriously. So again, I don't know if maybe the board should take a greater role in this, but as I went through all of these findings, I thought we should just, on finding number 5 about the landscaping, again, I'm waxing poetic about that beautiful tree in the front, but it really is an incredible tree. And the fact that they're saving it, it's not going to be easy to save it. It's a fragile tree too. It's very close to where all this work is going on. But the fact that they will is a real step in the right direction. They should get credit for that. That's why we can make these findings. So I'd like to have the findings really express some of these things that we're liking. Thank you.
Here, here.
Who would like to make a motion? Yeah.
I think we should have a ad hoc committee that keeps an eye on this design. So we should recommend approval, but have it come back to a committee to review a number of these items we're looking at. So before we make a motion in a broad sense, I've heard 3 out of 4 of us say we should have something else done to the facade of the building.
In terms of color,
Well, I wouldn't even say color necessarily, but just something.
that ties into the addition. And I must say, I do feel like we sort of sidestep the addition in a lot of our conversation here. It's well done. So we're able to look at it and go, great, looks good, let's move along. So
I'd like,
hats off for that. Sometimes we forget about the wonderful things that are happening in the plan set and that we often.
we're all practicing architects, and
Yeah,
when
we know how it
a
goes.
client will give you this impossible, do something and don't spend any money on it kind of request. And that's what we're asking them to do. But these architects are strong, capable architects, so I'm sure they can come up with something. But I would like to see that. That's one thing we're asking them to do, is something else on the exterior. I think we need to see the bicycle, either what does this enclosure really look like, or relocated, just think it through a little bit more. So I did not hear any consensus though to switch around the stuff in the back, so what you have is fine on that account. And the third thing I think a lot of us were saying is the floor plan needs just a little more thought as far as the circulation in and out of the building.
So Stephen, I changed that to consider the interior circulation for trash removal.
Yeah, I mean, the trash removal happens after hours and nothing much is going on in the school at that time except for trash removal. But circulation seems questionable, and it may not be easy to solve.
Thank you for typing this, Stephen. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna make this motion. I'd like to change though the second bullet point to not say colors. I'd like to give them more latitude. Create additional design elements or modifications to the exterior of the existing building.
Elements or modifications.
Yeah, I don't want it really broad. Just let them do something. And let the ad hoc committee decide if it's sufficient or work with them. And I would encourage them to come back to the committee or to the planning department early and just sort of see if we're all on the same page. Consider interior circulation. Well, I would say the word improve to facilitate trash removal.
Could we, under the second one, say, consider creating additional design instead of just create, which is.
Consider, fair enough. Consider creating. And on the entrance plaza, did we want to actually tell them to do something, or is it just? I don't think we need to say anything there.
Yeah.
I'm happy with these 3 bullet points.
If I might add one more friendly amendment, I guess.
Well, it's not, yeah, tell me what you're thinking.
Okay, the rear fencing between this property and the residential. I do want to have some, and again, I feel like you guys might have been put on the spot a little bit during this meeting, so we may not have an answer right now. But I want to make sure that that's something that does get addressed. If that's a falling down fence, that's obviously a security concern for you guys as a middle school. So I don't want to tie them into something now, but I want to make sure that doesn't fall off the radar.
So I would be willing to say something along the lines of work collaboratively with the neighbors to repair or replace existing fencing.
Along residential properties.
Yeah,
I'm
but
less
I
concerned about the
think it
others.
should say work collaboratively. I think fencing really needs to be shared. The cost of fencing is a common problem.
Yep.
And what I heard this neighbor asking for is for them to buy a new fence, and they should be doing part of it. You're doing the project, but the cost should be shared, in my opinion. Certainly, we're not going to stipulate how they pay for it. So work collaboratively with the neighbors to repair or replace existing fencing.
And I would also,
Residential neighbors.
yeah, for fencing along residential properties. I'd specify that.
But prior to that one, I would say something about re-examine the entry plaza area in order to emphasize it as a major feature of the building, something like that.
Re-examine or
The front entry area. I'm concerned that that area landscaping is overcoming the usefulness of it, and that it isn't answering the issue of the number of students that will gather there and use that as an open plaza.
okay. Let's put the 5th bullet point would be to consider.
The fencing.
Okay, second item, fourth item, fair.
If I may, so I mean, perhaps there will be suggested language here, but what was just stated was a little bit broad. So if we could maybe narrow into some specific direction to the applicant, I think that would be pertinent here.
Consider modifications to the hardscaping at the front of at the entry plaza to improve, is it student
Gathering.
congregation?
A gathering space for students.
To create a better gathering space for students. Consider modifications to the hardscape at the front entry plaza to create better gathering spaces Is that good, David?
Yeah.
And
That's
to
fine.
the applicant, that may or may not be related directly to the front bicycle parking.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, these are just, the ad hoc committee will evaluate this and I'd encourage them. So that's my motion.
second,
Okay, I think we've spoken to this extensively, but I hope
Does-
this is what everybody.
yeah.
is
Does the
supportive
applicant have
of.
any questions on this? No, good. Okay, all makes sense. Good. Okay, great.
Oh, just one,
Yeah, go ahead, David.
because we didn't talk about color on the interior, but
It's really beyond our purview.
yes,
and it's
under theirs.
It's, and
Okay,
it's a
leave
middle
it to
school. They'll
them.
have posters everywhere. They're
no,
gonna have,
no. It's
school
all-
dance things, stuff
It's all
like that. So.
part of our, what we've talked about here, so it's part of the
Do
record.
we want to put, I guess it goes without saying that the ad hoc committee should look at the findings or the language of the findings. We don't usually put that in, let's leave that off for now.
Yeah, we can, that's,
It's,
This is good enough.
okay. And, oh, do we need to say something about the EIR or or that we agree that it doesn't need to get a different, that was in the report?
Class 32 exemption, but yes, it would be in the recommendation. That's
You
on.
don't have,
Planning
you don't have
does-
to make
planning does
You
anything.
don't have to say anything
You
about
just,
it?
you just have to consider it as you are making your recommendation. You don't have to make a formal recommendation related
Great.
to it.
Okay, so we've considered that. Okay, well, that's. my
Okay, so
job.
this is the motion as presented with the following, with the 5 bullet points as listed for potential conditions of approval that will come back to an ad hoc meeting. So this would be moving the project forward, but these 5 bullet points would need to come back for an ad hoc meeting at some point in the future to be discussed with 2 of the board members. I'm happy to volunteer as one of the ad hoc members. Do we have a second ad hoc member who'd like to join? Yingxi,
Well,
you want to join me on that one?
Sure, I can.
Perfect. Yeah, because you might not be here, Peter.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is one of those cases where you may want to just hold off on making that decision.
I think the 2 of us will be all right. So yeah, we'll have myself and Yingxi assigned to it. And if, and either one of us fall off, then we'll reassign at that point. So at this point, we will call for a vote.
Board Member Bolte,
Yes.
Board Member Hirsch,
Yes.
Vice Chair Chen,
Yes.
Chair Rosenberg.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
So congratulations, your project is approved to move forward. We look forward to seeing you again on the ad hoc meeting for those 5 points that we can discuss at that time. Thanks very much and looking forward to seeing you. All right, at this time, it is now, we got a time check of 10:01. We have our next people waiting in the gallery, but we are going to take a 5-minute break so that everyone can sort of collect their thoughts and we'll begin at that time. So let's meet back here. Actually, if it's all right, we'll meet back at 10:10, so an 8-minute break. Great, thank you. All right, it is 10:11 and we are back. So our next agenda item is public hearing quasi judicial for downtown parking garage sign exceptions at 528 High Street, 445 Bryant Street, and 250 Hamilton Avenue. Recommendation on applicant's request for architectural review to allow sign exceptions for 5 projecting, also known as blade signs, across 3 parking garages in downtown Palo Alto. Recommendation is number 1, find the project design from CEQA. Number 2, recommend that the Director of Planning and Development Services approve the proposed projects based on findings in attachments B and subject to the conditions of approval in attachment C. So I'd like to go down the list and see if people visited all the sites, some of the sites, and if there's any disclosures. David, you want to start us off? Starting at your end this time.
Okay. I visited all the sites. I have no disclosures.
Yes, the same. I've no disclosures. I've visited all the sites and I'm actually extensively familiar with all of these sites. Thank you.
Walk around them
I
on a
did
daily
visit them.
basis.
I did visit them, all of them yesterday.
Fabulous. I visited all the sites and I have nothing to disclose.
Yeah, I've been to all the sites as well. No other disclosures.
Visited all the sites as well and no disclosures. Thank you.
Great. Let's turn it over to, aren't we good? It was a few. I'll turn it over to staff for presentation. Good morning.
Good morning. All right, good morning. My name is Nishida. I'm the project planner for the 4 projects that are being presented to ARB today. The city, who is also the applicant, is requesting a sign exception for 5 projecting signs to be installed across 4 parking garages. And there are also 3 wall compliant signs that are also included as a part of this proposal. The signage is proposed across 4 parking garages. The Bryant Lytton parking garage located at 445 Bryant Street. The Civic Center garage located at this City Hall, under City Hall at 250 Hamilton Avenue. The Cowper Webster garage located at 520 Webster. And the High Alma garage at 528 High Street. The 3 garages on Bryant, Webster, and High Street are within the planned community zoning district, while the Civic Center garage or City Hall is zoned as a public facility. All 4 project locations are located within the downtown north neighborhood in Palo Alto and are generally surrounded by retail and office uses. And the Palo Alto Caltrain station is located within half mile. The city is proposing to install 8 new LED matrix signs across the 4 parking garages listed previously, 5 of which are projecting signs requesting a sign exception for the sign area and the mounting height, and 3 compliant wall signs. The projecting signs which are requesting the sign exceptions, are double-sided LED matrix signs. The sign area for all of them are approximately 22 square feet, which exceed the allowable sign area of 3 square feet. And the height from grade to the top of the sign varies from location to location, but at most they are mounted at about 20 feet. There are also 3 compliant wall signs included in this proposal. The wall signs are single-sided, also LED matrix signs. The sign area is approximately 22 square feet, like the projecting signs. And the height from grade to top of signs also varies at most 20 feet. At location number 1, which is 528 High Street, we have 2 projecting signs, both requesting sign exceptions. There's one at the High Street entrance on the east side of the garage, and one at the Alma Street entrance at the west side of the garage. The clearance under the sign is 13 feet and 5 inches, and the height from grade to the top of the sign is approximately 20 feet, exceeding the allowable height of 12 feet that is stated in code.
Location number 2, at 445 Bryan Street. There is one projecting sign that is at the Bryan Street entrance on the west side. And there is a wall sign at the Florence Street entrance on the east side of the garage. The projecting sign will have a clearance of approximately 14 feet, 6 inches for a total height of approximately 21 feet, exceeding the allowable height of 12 feet allowed per code. The wall sign will have a clearance of 12 feet, 5 inches under the sign, and the wall sign is approximately 22 square feet, where 147 square feet is allowed, which is compliant per code standards. Location number 3 is 250 Hamilton Avenue, which is City Hall, both requesting a sign exception for the sign area, and both are projecting signs. There's one at the Bryan Street entrance on the east side of Civic Center Garage, and one on the Ramona Street entrance on the west side of the Civic Center Garage. The projecting signs at this location will be mounted atop a landscaped median, about 2 feet, 6 inches from the median, for a total height of 9 feet from the median to the top of the sign. The sign will not impede on driver visibility, pedestrian visibility, or impact the visibility triangle, and it will not impact pedestrian appeal. Oh, apologies for that. Location number 4, there are 2 wall signs proposed at 520 Webster, neither of which are requesting a sign exception, as they are 22 square feet where 203 square feet would have been allowed. I've also included some sign frame details. On the left, we have the double-sided projecting sign frame in aluminum, and on the right side, we have single-sided wall frame also in aluminum. The signs that are shown in the example here are 40 inches by 60 inches, and these are not in Palo Alto, but the signs that are proposed as a part of this application are 40 inches by 80 inches. So they are taller than what are shown here, but the LED display closely resembles what is proposed at the downtown garages. And the entire LED display can be manipulated and changed. Some key considerations, although the project consists of 4 separate applications that were submitted to the city for review, because all of them, we would like them to be consistent and coherent, they're being presented to the board together. The sign exception for the size and height of the signage is necessary because if the wall signs, if the projecting signs were compliant with what was listed in code, the primary goal of the project, which is to clearly display to drivers the availability of parking, would not be able to be met. The project is subject to ARB findings, sign exception findings, and downtown urban design guidelines. It is recommended that the ARB take the following action to recommend approval of the proposed projects to the Director of Planning and Development Services based on the ARB and sign exception findings and the conditions of approval. This concludes the staff presentation. The applicant has also prepared a presentation and will go next. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Nishita. Does the ARB have any questions specifically for Nishita's staff at this time?
I do. On a double-faced sign, do we measure the area as the whole size of the sign or twice because each side is a sign?
Only once. Only one face of the sign will count. So it's 22 square feet on one side of the sign.
It speaks to that in the code that we only count it once.
Thank you. For a sign exception, what is the specific finding that has to be made?
Or is it at our discretion?
There are sign exception findings that are
Yes,
in the
there's sign
packet.
exception findings in attachment B. There are 3 sign exception findings. One, that there are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances in which the sign exception should be permitted. And then the granting of the application is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of substantial property right to the applicant to prevent unreasonable property loss or unnecessary hardships. And then finding 3, which is the granting of the application will not be detrimental to the surroundings.
Okay, thanks. So it's a fairly broad, we'll come back to that in our discussion. Thank you.
Just one question regarding the size of the letters and the text on the signage. I mean, this is a typical sign that we see in a lot of garages, but is there, and you did mention that the content, it's basically one large LED screen. The content can be anything. Is there intent on the font size and such, and how does that compare to other similar garage signs?
I believe the applicant team does have a detail of the colors that were approved by the communications team, and they will share that later. But also with the color that was chosen, which is blue, it is consistent with all the other wayfinding parking signage that is in the city. As you can see in the photo here, the public parking placard that they have, that's blue, and all the other signage in the city is also blue. So per that, they wanted to keep the colors consistent.
I was asking more about the font size, like this, like the level 6, the 100 parking spaces as you see here. Is there a standard font size? Because obviously the 40-inch by 80-inch is driven by the content that you're trying to, the applicant is trying to have on the signs. Is there a standard of, if you're viewing it from 300 feet away, the font needs to be this big so you can see if there are 5 parking spots or 0 available? Was that part of the applicant's, is that going to be part of the applicant's presentation, or is that something you know?
I'm not sure about that. I can look into that.
I have a question. So for the sign location, all those proposed signs are all attached to the structure. So is it required to be attached to the structure, whether it's projecting or wall mounted, or it could be also on the ground, like freestanding?
A freestanding sign is a different type of a sign. These ones are proposed on the wall. So they're projecting and wall mounted, which are usually on the mounted to the wall, to the building facade. But the applicant at this time is not proposing a freestanding sign.
Thank you.
I have one more question, actually, regarding like what's on the screen here. If it's a blade sign that projects out, that's the 3 square foot maximum, right, per code. And then the flat against the building sign, like the Cowper Street entrance one here on the screen, that is within the size requirement. Is that purely based on whether it's projecting out or against the building? Is that what the code max square footage is? Okay, thank you.
Under attachment D, I have included the calculations for wall sign area. Essentially, the sign area is proportional to the size of the facade, or the area of the facade, and the calculations have been provided in the plan set. I can check what page number. And the wall signs per their calculations do not exceed the allowable wall area sign that's permitted.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know how much detail you want us to get into in questions.
As long as it's a staff question, because the applicant still has to make their presentation as well. So I have nothing for staff. I'm going to be holding mine.
The projecting signs can project no more than 1 foot over public property. Do we really meet that requirement on all of these? The one on High Street, Joe Bellomo's garage, didn't that stick out a couple of feet over the sidewalk?
I believe it does.
So are we asking for that exception as well? I didn't see anything about that. That you're shaking your head, yes, is that?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, nothing else for staff? Okay, let's move forward to the applicant presentation, please. When you get to the podium, please state and spell your name for the record, and you'll have 10 minutes to speak.
Good morning. My name is Stephen Evans, spelled Stephenevans. And I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Parking Guidance Systems. We're the supplier and the installer for the parking guidance system in the garages currently. As well as we want to take some time this morning to seek your approval, obviously, and demonstrate what our plan is, the designs, and what the functionality of the signage is and what it's for. So take just a couple of moments this morning. You can go to the next slide.
And Veronica, if you don't mind setting the timer as well, please. Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you. So what we're proposing is installing some signage, some matrix signage that allows for dynamic control and variable message to display variable messages to the public parkers to help find a parking space for not only each garage, but within each user group of the garage. So we have some technology installed in the garage currently that will feed information to these boards. Next slide. I have some of my colleagues here this morning with us. We have our VP of Operations, Matt Taylor, behind me, and some of our partners with Walker Parking Consultants who have helped us put this design together. And together we fill our team as experts and be able to provide this solution. Next slide. So we've talked about the 4 locations this morning that we'll be installing our parking garage, our parking signage. We believe this is an enhancement to the structures and to provide public information while parkers are looking for a parking space. This minimizes congestion and circulation throughout the downtown corridor and allows them to expedite the parking process, which leads to a number of positive things for the city. The signage is LED in nature and it has flexible mounting options. You talked about freestanding options, but we've identified hanging them off the side of the structure is the most secure and most effective way of doing it from a cost standpoint as well. You can go to the next one. These are the locations here that we've already talked about. So the signs we talked about are 40 inches wide by 80 inches tall. They're high resolution signs, so they're P3.9, which means the LED pixels are 3.9 millimeters apart from each other. Helps create high resolution images, videos, graphics, things of that nature. So the city, whoever's managing the content for the city, can create customizable messages, emergency messages, messages on demand for events, parking availability, different types of widgets that we're able to display on these signs. So we say any message, any graphic, any video, anytime. This the flexibility of this device. They are secure in nature and how the city would access those and display whatever mission they would like. They are bright, but they are controllable. So during the day when we have direct sunlight, we can turn the lights up. We have an ambient light controller inside the sign that actually can gauge how bright the sun is in each direction and then brighten and dim the lighting accordingly so as not to offend anybody. The signs will take 120 volt power. They do receive a Cat6 cable from the local network. And then from a communication standpoint, they connect to a local player, but they communicate over a Linsen protocol, which basically allows us to display our graphics in a simple format from each garage. Next. There's a number of different graphics based on each location, based on the physical constraints or the size of the garage. So we've got, each garage has a different number of levels, different number of parking spaces, different user groups. And we've fashioned and have some graphics that we've created to address a lot of that. Your font question you asked earlier, whatever font sizes are you're looking for to display the graphics is the most logical answer there, but there are some minimum requirements we typically work on. Typically within about 200 feet of a sign going 20 to 25 miles an hour, we use 5.1 inch digits or characters. If they're going faster than that, so on the blade type signs, if people are traveling 30 to 40 miles an hour, we use 7.5 inch digits in characters. So, and we've got enough real estate on the signs to display that content and those size dimensions. That's pretty standard across the industry. Sorry, you can go back one. We've worked with the city to create the graphics, and we've got the gentleman here that has worked on some of that, Nathan, right? That can speak to the design elements of it, that we've just basically taken information from the city graphics, color schemes, things of that nature to create this, the signage plan for now for the initial graphics that will be displayed. After that, they can be manipulated and changed on demand. Go ahead. Next. So you see that we have a couple of different signage options. Ones will be flush mounted to the face of the facade of the garage or flag mounted, kind of a cantilever design where it's hanging off the side of the structure so it's visible from the direction the cars are traveling. They will be above the clearance of the garage. They shouldn't be in the way of the public from a damage standpoint. We've taken care to make sure they're properly anchored and secured to the building for safety and security as well. Next. Civic Center, this is a flag mounted sign as well, so it's visible from both directions of travel, displaying the same information as the other ones, but we have identified this the most effective way rather than putting in the planter, taking up planter space, trenching and doing work of that nature, civil work, that we mounted on the side of the structure, secured to the building using proper anchoring, and then we will display the information to the public as they're driving. Next. The Copper Garage, both of these signage on either end of the parking structure, mounted at 11 feet, and they are wall mounted, so they're flat facing to the garage. They do not protrude, but they are projecting the space availability and what's going on inside the parking structure. We deem this as the most effective solution, as the direction of travel is actually directly into the parking garage. Next. And lastly, the Alma Garage, flag mounted as well here as cars are traveling both directions up and down the street to see parking availability and the messages that are on the sign. So these are the multiple signs that we have. There are all the faces that are identified here, sign 1, sign 2 for each parking structure. The type of sign, the type of mounting mechanism that we'll be using, and then if it's a single-sided sign or a double-sided sign, just for everybody's visibility here. The signage is an enhancement to the parking guidance system that's being installed, should be turned on here soon, hopefully. The signage is a critical component to the success of the system, as it provides public availability and accurate information to get people to make the decision to park in one of our structures and stop circulating around the city. So it produces city congestion, which cuts carbon emissions. It increases the driving and parking experience within the city of Palo Alto, making it finding parking spaces more easily and easily more available, and managing what our active inventory is from a usage standpoint in the future. And then having the sensors and the signage in place, so it increases security for the parking facility. Everybody realizes they're being watched a little bit, but that's the presumption they are. And so you tend to see some of the nefarious things that happen in parking garages decrease in these type of structures. So we think it's a critical product for the city, and we think that we're able to find that the parking spaces available for each parker as they're driving. The signage is a critical component, so we seek your approval for mounting them in these methods. Nathan, do you have anything you want to add about the graphics? No?
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
At this time, we go to public comment. Do we have any public speaker cards or raised hands on Zoom? And you can take a seat for a few moments.
No, I have no public comments.
Okay. So with no public comments, there's no need for rebuttal. So at this point, we will turn this over to the ARB to ask questions of the applicant. So now you may stand back up and we'll be asking some questions. So if it's all right, I'd like to actually kick us off. That's okay. There's a few different conditions here. So if I'm understanding correctly, the point of this is to keep the consistent signs, the consistent sizing. But I'm noticing that there are a few different conditions, and actually to the font size question, the 5.1 inches for 25 miles per hour and 7.5 inches for 35 miles per hour. From my understanding, every one of these signs is in a 25 mile per hour zone with the one exception on Alma. Is that accurate?
I believe that's correct.
Okay. I guess my question is, why would you not treat maybe that Alma sign differently than some of the other signs that are on the sort of slower lanes?
We're assuming they're slowing down as they're turning into the parking garage, and which make the font visible as they're driving.
Okay. Okay. It was more the question the other way, is that I feel like the signs work on Alma, and I'm a little concerned that they're maybe a little too big for where they're needed elsewhere. On that note, you've got the Civic Center, which only has 3 levels, right? Is there any potential that that sign specifically could be smaller, since there's only 3 levels and since that is a very slow entrance, and the fact that it's pushed back? Like, what was the purpose of making that one a blade versus a flat sign? And what was the purpose of making that one the same size as the others when it's maybe a slightly different condition?
Sure, good question. The reason for the blade versus the flat mounted sign was more of visibility as vehicles are driving each direction down the street and be able to see from both directions what's available inside the parking structure. The size of it was just for consistency purposes to be able to display not only availability today, but whatever graphics the city wants to display in the future to make sure they are similar in size. From a graphics management standpoint, you do upload the same size graphic to every single sign for centralized management.
Okay. So going back to the blade versus flat, understanding the size now. You sort of flip-flop back and forth between certain parking garages have flat and certain parking garages have blade. What caused you to make that determination?
Well, in some of the parking structures, you're not seeing the information at the street's edge. We haven't mounted the building. So as you're committed to turning in the parking garage, you would see the sign straight in front of you rather than put that sign on the street and take up a sidewalk space, whatever the case may be. The city decided to put that on the building itself. For visibility as you're pulling into the structure. So I believe the Cowper garage, you turn in a long corridor driveway and the display is right there in front of you.
Nice and easy, right, understood. Was there a dimensional distance that you guys had as a tipping point to go one way or the other? So sort of more specifically, it was just sort of
in our conversation.
You're like looking at this and going, okay, that one feels like a blade, that one feels like a flat. Okay, but there wasn't like a dimension point where it tipped one way or the other.
That's right.
Okay, understood. Okay, and then understanding the dimensions between all of this, and of course with the blade signs, again, specifically going back to the Civic Center, you guys, or it was stated in the presentation that blade sign at the Civic Center will not impede with visibility or accessibility, correct? So even though it's only 2.6 inches off the ground, and it is projecting out from the two entrances and exits to that, you're not concerned about visibility on that one?
You actually pull out past the signs when you're actually exiting the facility, so it doesn't impede your visibility when you're actually making your turn onto the street. The sign would be way behind you at that point.
Is that one that could be considered to be flat? Would there be something, sorry, and I don't mean to harp on this one, but this one is, I'm a little bit more nitpicky on this one because it is low. It's sort of in two drive paths. You've got pedestrians obviously coming in and out of all of these. And because this one is set a little bit farther back from the sidewalk, that's why I'm asking about the dimension. Is this one far back enough that it could go for a flat sign instead of a blade sign?
I'd have to go back and look at the site conditions. I just off the top of my head, I wouldn't say yes.
Check after the meeting.
Right.
I do see a raised hand behind you. Is there someone else who'd like to speak about? If you'd like to speak, please come up to the podium, state and spell your name for the record. Appreciate that.
Hello, all. I'm Nathan Baird. I'm in the city's Office of Transportation and a transportation planning manager. And I did extensive walk with all of these locations and sites and see them almost daily.
Yeah.
I recall when we were looking at this one, to put this one flat, you almost have to be right on top of the entrance, like almost turning in before you could see that information because it is kind of set back from the street a little bit from the sidewalk. It's also right above the planters there. So there wasn't really any concern for the pedestrian height there. And so turning it, from my point of view, I'm not in the industry or anything, but from my point of view, walking or traveling on that street, you could see the sign much more easily on the approach to it. If it has a blade, if you turn it flat against this location, it's pulled back a bit. So you almost have to be, if it's flat, you have to be kind of right on top of it before you could see the information that's most pertinent to you.
Okay, fair enough. And then final question for me is, what was the purpose of the blue color choice? And I know that it's changeable. Okay, maybe that is for you as well. I know that that's changeable, but why was the decision made to be blue? A lot of our Palo Alto parking signs are bright green now. So the question is, what's with the color deviation?
Sure, we do have some variability in the signage color. So those green signs that you see are in the California MUTCD, and those are kind of more, it's a vehicle guidance sign in that instance, and it's not a regulatory sign, but it's a guidance sign. And so we have some options there that are California MUTCD compliant green. We also have a white option now. We've installed those ones throughout the California Avenue area. This type of sign is more of a guidance sign. It's not trying to be within the traffic realm per se. It doesn't need to be a California MUTCD compliant sign per se. And so we had on the books some recommendations about our signage where we've had a consultant come in several years ago before I started, before 2020. And we had, that project was looking at the downtown specifically and recommended, kind of came up with some design guidelines for this type of parking sign. They have been somewhat installed throughout the downtown, but not entirely through the downtown. So in the downtown, we still have the old historic kind of green parking signs that are California MUTCD compliant. But as for the parking garages and lots, we've begun to do this kind of blue package. And so we thought it looks good. I'm not an architect. I don't really have an opinion one way or the other. We could, if ARB feels it's really important, we can go back to green. There's a lot of flexibility with it. But in talking with the communications team, they liked to kind of those recommendations that we had on file. And over time, as we have opportunity to put all the parking kind of the branded type look, this is the kind of look that we would like to go with.
Great, thank you. And I actually do have one more question, so I'm not sure who it's going to be for, but with recent hacking concerns of push button crossing paths, knowing that these are mutable at any moment, what are the security precautions you guys will have in place to make sure that these signs will not be randomly adjusted or used for not parking purposes?
Question. Yeah, so everything is located on premise here behind the city's firewalls, and then it's communicated the information up to a cloud server, which is also secured within Microsoft Azure, and is managed by a third party that we contract to look after all of our sites. From a hacking standpoint, they are very secure. They're really all the data is encrypted as it's going across the network as well. Well, maybe not Fort Knox encryption. It's certainly more than ample to handle the several hundred sites that we have across the country. Have had zero issues so far. So by utilizing the city's infrastructure, our security protocols, and the management of our cloud servers, we feel that we're more than secure enough to prevent the folks that want to keep them out of it.
Great. And then on that note, last question, like let's say something, God forbid, did happen. Is there a plug that you can unplug? Is there a master shutdown, something like that? And again, we don't need to get into too much detail. This is public forum, but just, is there some sort of, kill switch for these in case of an issue?
There is. There's a way to turn the power off at each kind of sign.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm happy to go next unless somebody else wants to. Thank you. So yeah, I have a couple of questions, maybe more than a couple for the applicant. You did mention that the font size would be about 5.1 inches. Is that what's illustrated on that sheet right there?
I believe it is, yes.
Okay, because yeah, if you could actually, stay on the elevation below,
Down.
here. So for the 7 rows of text, for instance, that kind of those boxes seem to be about 5 inches tall, based on your 80 inches height. But I most have issue with the Civic Center one because I do drive into here every time here, and seems like for 3 rows of text, you don't necessarily need 80 inches of screen size. And I'm also not sold on the fact that it doesn't impede visibility, because when you're trying to pull out of the parking garage, especially, watching for pedestrians, watching for bicyclists, to go past the sign, which is 40 inches wide, you have to pull far enough forward, and that's where people crossing in would be. So it seems like it's unnecessary to be so big in height. So if you could make it shorter, then you can, if the bottom is 5 feet off the ground, then as you come out of you have visibility under the sign versus having to go past the sign. So that's my concern for 3 rows of text. It doesn't seem like 80 inches is essential, and it's kind of impeding visibility that you have to pull out past that sign before you can see out. For the other ones, because they're mounted higher, I have less of a concern, but for this one, 5 inches of 5.1 times 3 plus space plus the P sign, you don't need more than 40 inches of height. It seems like it's overkill to do that for 3 rows. So is the And the other question I have for you on that one is about the power and data, because each one of these needs power and data. How is that coming out to these? Are the conduits going to be visible? Is everything going to be concealed? I don't see any of that in the details on page AG 701.
The conduit will be visible from the exterior of the structure that's coming into the signs.
Sorry, say that again.
The conduit will be visible. So the conduit will come up from, depending on the garage, you will see the conduit coming out of the structure into the sign.
Okay. And in that case, like, because every building is a different color, is that going to be painted? Is it like, how is it going to be concealed, wrapped in some way? How is that infrastructure getting, concealed or not
It
concealed?
hasn't been discussed yet as of today, but it's something we can definitely consider.
And okay, one more question then about the mounting. That was, I think, also on 701. You have the typical construction details of I think it's on 701, the little plate and the anchorage. Does that actually apply to all conditions with the, right here with the little bolt?
Yeah, I believe we're going to use the same mounting techniques for all of them to hold them securely to the building.
Is every condition a concrete that you're going?
It is
into?
going in concrete or steel, yes.
In all of them? Okay, so this detail would apply to concrete attachment and you'd have something else if it's steel?
It should be a nuts and bolts type configuration for the steel.
Okay, and in this image here, the conduit for the power and data is coming from either above, sideways, bottom, somewhere, and visible on the front?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you for your presentation. I have a couple of questions. So first one is still related to whether cantilevered or wall mounted. So for the blind garage, you have both sides facing the street, but why you determine one is wall mounted and the other is side mounted?
I don't know how we chose to do the wall mounted versus the blade sign.
Again, it was just kind of a judgment call when we went out there. I tried to walk from both sides of the street, tried to imagine being a driver approaching it, was really trying, we don't want to do, we only did the blade where we thought it would kind of enhance and make the project make sense. This one, I don't have again, it's kind of a narrow street. It's got parking on both sides. We wanted drivers to be able to see it, as soon as possible so they can make a decision to park here or park at another garage. But again, I don't have much more to add than that.
Sorry. So as far as the width of the street, are the Bryant and Florence Street about the same width, or one is narrower than the other? That make you make the different decision?
They're both, both fairly narrow downtown streets. We don't have a lot of wide streets in downtown. Again, Calpert was easiest to put the flat because you do have to, you have to be committed already to approach that garage at all. And then, wherever we have the blade, I found it in the field just easier to see it as a driver ahead to, you don't want to be committed to a decision and then realize that that's not a good decision.
And another thing about the sign design, compared to the standard space available sign where only the numbers are LED, we have the fancier one which the entire screen are LED. So I wanted to know, so I understand there are some flexibilities that you can display different stuff, but since it's for the parking garage, so other than showing different levels and P sign and the space availability, is there I may need your help to guide me, like in which circumstances you will show something different, that you will use the entire screen.
Yeah, so the broader context is like right now, we don't have a lot of differentiation between our parking spaces in downtown or California Avenue. It's all 2 and 3 hour parking. There is some thought, particularly with our SCAP, our Sustainable Action Plan, that, you know, there might be in the future some desire to differentiate some of our parking, to have some of our on-street parking be differently priced than this parking. You know, these garages and lots also serve events on the weekends. So there is a lot of flexibility with these signs. You know, we made it look exactly the same as the P50 Sherman garage sign, but that sign is not flexible. And so we're kind of locked in over there. But, you know, as we grow over time, we might want to provide some additional information on these signs, depending on the context. So we could, you know, have different weekend event parking available with this signage. The immediate option that will probably put forward next, and I don't know if I would need to come back to this group or not, but just the availability of the parking at the other garages would be nice for this to kind of oscillate between this garage's parking and the other garage's available parking. The Alma garage in particular, the High Street garage, is very popular. It fills up the fastest. It would be really nice if we oscillated between the kind of low availability of that garage and we're able to say Civic Center, Calbert Bryant, you know, these other locations have a very available parking at the upper levels. It would be nice for drivers to know that as they come into the downtown, wherever their entry point is, and see, oh, this first garage that I came across doesn't have much parking, but there's plentiful parking available at a nearby garage. That is one of the first options I'll probably be thinking about. But yeah, there's a lot of flexibility here for us. I'm not interested in anything but, you know, the parking guidance right now. These signs are very functional for what we're trying to accomplish downtown.
Thank you.
Are the signs available in different sizes?
They are.
Smaller than this as well?
They come in 20-inch by 20-inch screens essentially, and we put them together to create the sign so the size that they
So
are.
this is actually made up of several screens.
Yes, sir.
Put together. Well, that's good to know. Okay.
And they're 40 inches wide. So if you wanted to reduce it, you'd have to go to 20. So it'd be half the width.
That's correct.
Got it.
Okay. So I have two sort of, I guess, ideas I want to ask questions about, but you're the expert on this kind of sign as far as parking garages go, which is great. How close to the sign would you say people like to be to understand this information? When they're pulling into a garage, is it from 50 feet away that you see it and decide what you're doing? Or is it when you're right in front of it that you would think people really process the information?
So I think more and more parkers are looking for parking as their destination, not the actual business they're going to. So I think they're actively looking for parking and how much spaces are available, first off. Secondly, it's hard to say when they start looking. It's all kind of relevant about what you're looking to do, right? So we want to put them in the most prominent position possible to make them as visible as we can, so we capture that person as early to accelerate that parking process, essentially. So if the person sees it at 50 feet, we want that message to be clearly visible, what the purpose of it is, the availability of each parking group, whether it's 3-hour parking, whether it's electric vehicles, or it's ADAs, you know, the current usership of the garages. So we want to display that information. It says, because the decision is not where am I parking right now, is there a parking space in this garage for me? Right.
I asked the question because I can't quite tell if it's just me being 60 years old, but until I get close enough to this thing, I don't bother to think, wow, the technology is telling me where parking spaces are free or not. And it's only when I'm like right there, looking out my window as the driver, that I can really understand, oh, this is telling me there's a parking spot. And from 50 feet away, I have no clue what this thing is doing, but I don't know if that's just me. If most of America, most of our generation, other people process this sooner. That's why I'm asking that question to you. What's the optimum distance for somebody to really make useful use of this information?
Typically between 100 and 200 feet. That's when people are looking for the parking garage. But I would say driving around your downtown, you've got parking signs kind of scattered all over the place at key intersections. You're trying to guide people to a parking garage and notify them there's parking in these directions. We want to accelerate that. So you see there's a parking to the right. When you turn right, we want to reinforce what that sign says. There is parking availability here. That's what the parking P is on top of the sign, to indicate this sign is for parking. And I think the public has grown and understood what this technology is, as you see them around various garages garages around California. And they're able to logically assess what those signs are and drive them to those parking spaces to get them off the streets and into the parking structures and out of their car quicker.
So the same line in regards, how high above the driver's plane of vision is the optimum position for these signs? Again, as a driver, I'm more or less looking forward, say 2 feet to 8 feet above the ground is where pedestrians are. I'm really focused on that as I'm driving. When you put the sign 20 feet up, I'm sort of looking up through the dashboard. Is that considered optimum though? Because from 200 feet away, it's probably better to be up high, but from 10 feet away, it's impossible to see that high up.
Yeah, we're hoping by 10 feet away from the parking garage, you made your mind up to park in the structure because you've seen it from far away. You've identified there's a space for you or that there is no space and that you need to accelerate to the next destination, as Nate was alluding to.
Okay. So then the second sort of thought I'd like to, through the chair, ask is that we're all, at least I'm familiar with the new garage over on Sherman Avenue. And I've gotten used to using that little sign there.
Yeah.
And I think we can pull up an image of that. And I'd like to check with the city what size that sign is and sort of see how it's related to my experience on the street. Is that okay to have them pull that up?
Absolutely. It might take a minute or two to do so.
I asked Claire if we could.
All right,
Steve,
bear with us.
I found it very interesting. I can pull it up on my phone, but to share with everybody. Yeah, here we go. So this sign on the right here is basically serving the function we're talking about for this particular garage. And I go to this garage at least once a week, maybe twice a week, and find that it's not till I've actually made the right-hand turn in that I process what the sign is telling me where to go.
Right.
So having it right at eye level as a driver is great. And the size of this is perfect. It's really, the letters are clearly legible. They're like the 5 inches you're talking about.
They are.
Right. But the sign as a whole is 20 inches wide, maybe. But I wanted to ask the city I'm sorry, I forgot your name, but if you could, do you know how big this sign is?
I believe that sign's about 6 feet tall.
But how wide is it then?
2 feet, probably. 24 inches, 28 inches, if memory serves me correctly.
To my colleagues, I think this one works. It works well because it's right where you need it to be.
Agreed. The other thing I also wanted to mention from your line of questioning is that usually, like, if, like just last weekend, I was at a garage that I wasn't familiar with, but all I was looking for from 200 feet is where's the garage, right? And then when you're like this distance, as in this picture, then you're trying to figure out what level is the parking available.
Right.
From 200 feet, I'm not trying to see is there parking available on the 3rd floor or 5th floor.
Correct.
Right. So it seems like the content is something that is worth discussing. Like from far away, from 200 feet away at that height, you're looking for, is the parking full or is there parking available? Not in the fine grain of how many accessible parking or EV charging is available, but more exactly like this image of, now I see that there's only one spot on one level and 108 on the top, so that's more of a up close about to enter the garage information, not as you're approaching information. What's your thought on that? Like in terms of planning for this the content rather than where the sign is?
I love your thought process. I think that these type of signs that you're seeing here with the multi-level signs are more legacy type signs where that information, while it's fun to display to the public about how many spaces are on each level, I don't think it's super critical at this point in time at the entrance. That's my opinion as well. It's more about which user type there's parking available for, and then we bring them in, and then there's a secondary layer of signs that says how many spaces are available up this ramp and down that ramp or up that row, that to help guide people into those particular spaces. So I agree that, and that's the great part about having these matrix type signs. They are completely flexible. So what we deploy today, we go, okay, that doesn't work real well. Let's change the graphic. Oh, we like that. Well, let's enhance this. Let's improve that. Let's change the message. And it can be done on demand in real time. So I do like your approach. And that's kind of my philosophical approach to these signs as well, is it's not important about, and I always go back to, we're from Texas. It's hot, right? It's hot. And so if I'm driving through and I see that level 1's full, level 2 full, and there's 500 spaces on the rooftop, I'm not parking in there. Right? Because I don't want my vehicle to roast in the sun. So, but if you tell me there's 500 spaces in the garage for me, and I pull in and the signs take me to the rooftop, I'm gonna park on the rooftop because I'm already here, I'm committed. So the whole premise of a parking guidance system is get people off the streets into the structure quickly and get them to a parking space efficiently. And over signing can be detrimental to the parking experience. So I'm in agreement. So we can definitely manipulate some of the graphics for consideration.
So on the Sherman garage, there's signs throughout internally too. You can even see it in the image we're looking at.
That's right.
Is there plans to do that as well in these other garages?
It is. There's a signage plan that's already installed within the garage to help circulate through down each row.
Wonderful. Okay, good. Thank you.
So, yeah, I mean, it brings something else to mind here, because if you're outside and you see a sign that says, this is what's on each level, are you really going to be able to do that? Or is it better to say this number of spaces are available in this garage, period? You know, and a much smaller sign, and then lead people into the garage who are going there. And on each floor, you do what you are just saying.
Mm-hmm.
It's a kind of a repetitive experience that you could get from that. And it's very brief and to the point. So that you aren't really interfering with the surfaces outside. You're getting somebody in the garage by saying, this is where your garage is with a P. Can you do it that way without having a sign on the outside that has anything more than the available parking spaces in this garage?
Yeah, the graphics are all subjective, and what the message is completely flexible to what the city's needs are and requirements are. So that's the beauty of the sign. Is what we're talking about today, again, can change tomorrow. And the approach and the philosophy of what information and how we display it, and the size of the information for that matter, is all subject to change, right? So today it's multi-level availability with the ADA user groups on there as well by level.
Yes, good
Tomorrow
idea.
it could be just transient parkers, ADA parkers, EV parkers. Tomorrow we could have a special event in the garage, Breast Cancer Awareness Month coming up. We want to have a blocked off section for Susan G. Komen.
Yeah.
We could put that category of parking on these signs too. It says, hey, if you're coming down to Palo Alto, these are the spaces that are allocated for you. And so that can all change from day to day and can be scheduled to change on a program as well for automation purposes. But yes, to answer your question, you can be as flexible as you'd like to be and display whatever information you'd like.
But with that line of thinking, if I may interject, it is a 40-inch by 80-inch sign necessary out on the street for kind of the big picture content, right? Because this sign based on, 5-inch text and all that, you're planning for 40-inch by 80-inch height for 7 rows of text for each floor. And the other ones, other than this building one, I'm not so concerned about the size, but then when I think about the content versus where it is, like, is a sign like up in the air essential for seeing how many parking spaces are available at various spots? So if it's really about parking for this event, it doesn't need to be 40-inch by 8-inch tall sign. Versus when you're approaching the parking, then it's more about, this floor has this event parking and this floor has 20 parking spaces for whoever. So that's more of an up close information, at which point you probably don't need to have 5-inch tall text, but it can be, right? But I'm kind of feeling like there's a disconnect between the content and location if the intent is to put parking space availability per floor. I understand the content may change, but then one informs the other, right? If the content is not going to need to have 7 lines of text, the sign does not need to be so big.
Sure. In your first presentation, you had a picture of some of the signs we had up on another parking structure. In your presentation, can you pull that back up, please? Not these, the ones that were on the side of the building that were already lit up. Right there. So these signs, we have 30 6 of these signs. These are the city of Cincinnati installed in their downtown corridor around their stadium district. So between the Red Stadium and the Bengal Stadium, and they have a Central Riverfront parking garage and about 25 parking lots around the city that they utilize. These signs are 40 inches wide by 60 inches tall. All right, so the information is variable from displaying just general availability to larger format graphics for parking rates or Bengals seats or wherever the entry points are. And the city opted in this instance to use the same type sign at every single location, whether it was a multi-level sign or just a surface lot that they were just providing general accounts for. I think the city of Palo Alto has taken some of the same approach. As we want to have, it's better to have more real estate than not enough real estate if you want to display messages on demand. So some of these signs, where the one on the left, you're compressing some information that you want to enlarge text, that if you had a little bit more space on there, you'd be able to display and not have to leave anything out. So being able to have a little bit more real estate on the front side of it may alleviate something you may want to do in the future, and having to compress everything to make it a little bit smaller, or eliminate some messages as well. So I think the city opted to go with a little bit larger sign now in hopes of using it in the future.
I have one more set of questions on the Alma Street garage. So again, it's in relationship to the location, right? So when we're looking at the Alma side of the Alma Street garage, it appears to be after the entrance, right? Sorry, let me get my item here. You turn in there. So why would that be afterwards, right? It really should be foreground of it, because the primary entrance for that parking garage is coming in that direction from Alma. It's not taking the left into that. And on that same note, on the same parking garage, here's the entrance over here, and the sign is all the way at the front here, whereas every other sign is like sort of right next to the entrance. So this parking garage in particular, I'm having some issues with the heights and the locations of these signs. I think I can speak for our fellow board members that two of these projects seem pretty straightforward, and two of them seem like they have more complications. So David, did you have something else? I thought I saw your hand on the button as well.
Well, I'm noticing that in certainly the text here, you're saying level 6, and, is all of that changeable? It looks to me like you have the areas where the actual parking numbers are separate from the word level.
From my understanding, if I can jump in here, I think the entire thing's basically one big TV screen. You can change anything you want.
Is that correct?
That's correct. It's basically like a giant PowerPoint display, right? You're creating scenes and graphics, and they're totally interchangeable and customizable. So there's nothing on the signs that's static whatsoever. And you can change this to whatever you want to look like.
So then the question of size and messages, wouldn't you start from actually considering all of the possible messages and provide us with a list of uses that you see the sign? You mentioned them, you actually mentioned those, but I don't think we saw anything like that except for the one that you showed us from another city there, Cincinnati, or where it was from, with the actual type of and a message. What would be all the message possibilities for these garages? Isn't this a sort of a programmatic thing that you might explore first, and then determine the size of the sign based on the possible messages that you'd be using it for?
Yeah, so it's hard to say what the messaging will be. I mean, it's completely unlimited as what messages you want to display on these signs. We have these signs that are 40 by 80, 40 by 60. We also have signs with the Venetian and Palazzo in Las Vegas that are 60 feet across and 30 feet tall, and they have a wide variety of messages they display on these signs. So they're very, very flexible. In this case, they're going to be pretty much dedicated to parking purposes. But that may change tomorrow. I mean, Nate may get a wild hair and say, I want to display his birthday, that it's his birthday on the things, so everybody, they say congratulations for his birthday. But they are parking specific signage and anything within the parking realm about special events, parking rates, the weather outside, whatever you want to do in terms of what you want to display on there. It's highly flexible. And I think we could come up with a million different graphics, but the city has opted to elect this with the feedback as the primary image they want to use. And again, tomorrow we can change that graphic to something else that the city approves as well.
Understood, but I would think that it might be a good lesson for us, to know what it is that the messages are going to be.
Yeah, so currently this is the messaging that we have planned. I really have with this project two really high values for the digital signs themselves. That's the optionality and then also the standardization. And so, my staff is very small. I'm one of a 2-person team that manages our 8 parking programs. And yes, we have a lot of big ideas, but we will always be following city vision and city process and city direction. So right now we're accomplishing what we've been directed to do. We want to make the available parking advertised to the public in a much more direct, open way. I like the optionality because there is a lot we can do more in our downtown specifically to make parking more accessible. We have a lot of parking resources. It's not all used the same, but we have an undifferentiated program right now. And so I like the optionality. I like the standardization. The current direction, though, is just this parking availability.
Right. Well, that seems like it's the priority is to see for one, you come to a garage, you want to see exactly how many spaces are available here. And, there are open lots sometimes next to some of the garages so that when you see that you can't get in a garage, if you want to park in that garage, you can always use an open lot nearby. So frequently it seems to me that the priority for us is to tell everybody just how many spaces are there in this garage, which means that the outside sign might be able to be smaller and less prominent on the street.
Sure, I'm open to a conversation about it being smaller. I just want to make sure we meet the objectives across the project. I think there'll be some cost involved with changing the signage size. I would prefer that they were all the same size because, we have a small team. I will be responsible for programming these signs. I don't necessarily want to have to design for a bunch of different sizes necessarily. But I'm open to the project team having to kind of talk about it potentially. I don't also, but at the same time, I also don't want to slow it down. We've got this project, it's almost available. I think I'm open to coming back regularly to talk about sign purpose here. And, that optionality is pretty great, I think. But I'm open to having to have a continued conversation about what we do in the future with these signs. But right now, the direction is very clear, and I don't have any direction to do anything differently with these signs than what we've talked about. But I do value the optionality and the standardization.
And I would just add, having the flexibility for conditional information, the garage A is full, proceed to garage B or C, being able to display that information and having not just availability for each parking garage, the parking garage that the sign is located at, but maybe the adjacent one or the next closest one that does have availability on that display would require additional space that the current design wouldn't allow, if you shrunk the sign, wouldn't allow for. So I believe leaving them this size is going to optimize what you're able to do with the signs long term. And give flexibility to Nate and his team for operating what the messages should be.
All right. Thank you very much for your time. You may be seated.
Appreciate it.
That was robust discussion. All right, we're going to turn this back over to the board. So this is now, public comment is now closed, applicant's presentation is now closed. So we'll really turn it back to our internal discussion here. From what I heard everybody saying is that there's sort of two of these. One of them is, and again, Nishida, correct me if I'm wrong here. One of them, the Cowper Garage is pretty much already compliant. Both those blade signs are actually not blade signs, they're flat. And those are in compliance already based on sizing.
Yes, that's correct.
Perfect. Okay, so that one's done. With the Florence and Bryant Street, the Florence side is a flat, the Bryant Street is a blade, but that's not seeming to be the most concerning of the parking garages. Does anyone have any specific concerns about that one side being a blade? Is anyone going to argue that one way or the other?
To the chair, I'm not sure did I just hear you say that one of these is okay and just?
Correct. One of them
Yeah,
is
I don't agree
compliant.
with that.
Oh, sorry. One of these is a code compliant wall sign
Right.
project and doesn't require any sign exception or architecture review board review.
This is in front of the board as a whole. I'm going to comment as a whole on this. And I don't agree to just check one of them off like that. I think all of these are not quite right. And so I don't know how you want to discuss this, Chair, but I don't want to just check it off like that.
Okay. So that's fair. My comment is along the lines of these are 4 separate permits, right? So one of these actually doesn't need to be here at all. Now, if they want to keep them cohesive, then they'll listen to the other comments and apply it accordingly. But one of these, we're not going to be discussing size, height, anything like that, because it's already compliant and it's not in our purview. But I think that the other 3 are absolutely fair game. And if the applicant wants to make sure that they're consistent, they will listen to these and apply it back to all 4. Does that make sense? Okay, go
I just
ahead.
don't agree with you. I'm sorry. It's
Okay,
in front of
fair
us
enough.
now.
I
We're
don't
going to
agree with
comment on
that
them as a
either.
whole.
Oh, fair enough. Go
So I
ahead.
think you should
No.
support us on this, Kendra.
I
We want to see this reviewed to the best possible architectural standards in the city as a whole. It's in front of us. You're going to hear us as a whole.
Okay, go ahead.
So you want me to start or is anybody else?
Please.
Okay. I think you have 2 kinds of data you're trying to convey. It's what I'd call detailed information and broad scale information. And detailed information is not suitable on a large sign high on the building. And I think you're mixing it up here. It's great that these are flexible and you can do all kinds of stuff, but the location and the size of the sign is important relative to the kind of information you're trying to convey. So what I'm hearing you say is you want to convey this detailed information about parking availability within the structure. Therefore, the signs should be scaled and placed such that that information is easily conveyed. I don't think you read that from 200 feet away. I think you read that from 10 feet away. So the sign should be positioned appropriately. Having the sign 20 feet in the air doesn't work to convey that information. So we're not trying to tell you you can't do that, but when you want to connect the dots, it's not working. When you make these large signs, and I understand you want them all the same, but the buildings are all different. And our goal here is to look at the architectural consistency. We have to find that it's high quality aesthetics. And I can't make that finding. When you stick the 40-inch by 80-inch digital blade sign on the side of the one on High Street, which is a small, tiny street sticking out like that, it doesn't look good. It doesn't fit with the building. And I think if you want to have large signs that can convey all other kinds of information, you have to integrate them much more carefully with the building. The signs will be different. Each building is different. Some may be a horizontal banner that goes 8 feet long and 20 inches high. Some could be a blade sign. So I think that I understand what you're wanting, which is consistency, but then you're going to have to go to smaller signs and really focus on, like the one on Sherman Avenue, catching the driver's attention as they're coming in, positioning it right there. The Civic Center one, for example, would be better suited if it's flat on the wall on the driver's side. As you're turning into that garage, you look your eye up and you see it. You're not going to process that information from out on the street. It's too far away. If you want to convey larger information, today is Breast Cancer Awareness Week. Sure, then the big sign on the side of the building is appropriate, but then it's better integrate to the building, maybe a horizontal sign, maybe make sure the city wants that, because that's a totally different project than what you're talking about. So at a high level, you're just not quite there yet because you're not, in my mind, really connecting the functionality with what the possibility is of these signs. And they're too big to really be easily integrated into the buildings as designed, in my opinion.
I agree that I want to jump in then. Functionality is really, really important here. Messaging is really important. That's what I was trying to say before, messaging. I think the primary message in most of these garages is simply parking spaces, getting in, getting a space, going into the garage versus going to another garage. I don't think you could even exactly say, well, this one doesn't work, therefore go over there. People have to know their community where the parking really is. And I think generally speaking, that's a program throughout the city with the Ps that you have next to streets that have parking. And it's a citywide signage issue that isn't always answered in electronic signs that are within the building here. But functionalities change. Some garages are simply for parking and people want to go in and out. I was watching on the one that's closest to Middlefield, which one? Not Bryant, but anyhow, sorry, let me just find it. Not the Webster. Well, anyhow, the ones that are simply parking really don't need a lot of different messages, and you're not likely to have that. It's going to be parking for people who use that immediate area, and they will know where to go, and you don't have to have excessive information, and the sign can be smaller. And I think levels of parking within each of the levels should then say how many parking spots are there in this area. It's a progressive thing, and most people will know where they're going and simply want that simple information. Other parking garages may have a requirement for different events or whatever, but I don't think you need to say whose birthday it is. It's general information, that's important. And progressive information, after all. It's a wonderful idea is to have this and to use it in that manner, but to put it out in the front of the building isn't really necessary. So therefore, you don't need a sign that's so big that it gives you every level and have to read it and say, well, let's see, I want to go to this level. You don't make that decision until you get in and move through the garage. So have it work and also the other thing is it has levels on each of these. At least that's the way you're describing the sign. Well, people know, it like a 3-level garage should have just 3 numbers, or it has how many for in the whole garage. And then when you get in, you have each level. It seems to me that's a more reasonable way to do it. I don't think it should have the option of too much information on the outside. And also that as soon as you get to something that's as big as that, it really begins to interfere with the architecture that it's going against as well. The one you showed us that was not from our town here is really scaled to what's there. And so I don't see that there's a lot of thought given to where each one of these is going to go just because you've chosen a standard size.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, I just want to chime in that kind of same thought. The content and the sign is not working together, right? If the content is, well, first, I don't agree that, this level of content needs to be out on a blade sign, 20 feet or so up in the air. And so if that's not the content, it's about, parking is fuller, 20 spaces available in the garage. It doesn't need to be this big. And for this content, the location is not appropriate for all the times we drive and try to find parking. We're not looking from, the next intersection to see like how many parking spaces at what levels. So I don't agree. I sympathize with you on, wanting them all to be the same. Absolutely. But at the same time, like everyone else was saying, like each building is a little bit different and how it's located matters. Like I was already saying earlier, for the city center garage, that blade sign is problematic for visibility, whereas the one on Webster, I understand that the square footage works by code, But the way it's attached with kind of off of the lower panel, hanging off on the upper, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And, you know, the content location for that parking as you're approaching, it doesn't make sense for all of that, you know, parking levels information to be that high up in the air. So there's a disconnect between the content that you're trying to share versus the location and therefore the size of the sign. So it seems like we're not quite, you know, we're not quite in agreement with what you're proposing. And, you know, if the content is flexible, I mean, there's a reason why we have a 3 square foot sign limit, right, for blades. It's for consistency of a variety of signs along the street, and it's, you know, it's not for displaying variety of content. If it's purely for parking information, if it's for any other information, like, you know, who's buying today's sign, that's a whole other conversation of, you know, how is sign, you know, consistent across the city, which is, you know, pretty stringent about signage requirements compared to other neighboring cities. And we need to be sympathetic to that and be mindful of that as we develop this pretty large LED sign on a city property, whereas all the other, you know, developers, we're telling them you can't put more than a 3 square foot sign for their content. Whereas we're like loose on content and asking to approve a sign of this ginormous size. So I'm not in agreement with what is being presented here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation again. And I think the intent is good. And we want to embrace the high technology, and we want to have the flexibility for the futures. However, I think we're just trying to blend so much information into this single sign. However, when the visitors approaching the garage, it depends on the distance from the garage. They wanted to receive different information. So as the other member said, I think the sign is too big and too much information. It is here for this purpose and this height. And also I want to point out for some of the locations, we might want to think about the mounting height compared to the street tree levels, the street trees. Because for example, for the Bryant garage, there are street trees along the sidewalk. And it seems like the mounting height is about the same as where the tree canopy is. So it's really hard for you to see the sign until you're really close to the entrance. So does the Cowper, the High Street, as the chair mentioned, maybe we will relocate. We should relocate the sign so that it is more closer to the entrance of the garage. And for the civic center one, where the city hall is, I just cannot find a reason why. Yeah, I understand you want everything to be same so that it is easier to be in operation. However, for this 3-level garage, I just don't buy it. We need this large size of sign in this specific location. And also another thing is when it moving forward, I want to make, I think you will make sure, like for the availability, the number of availability, it will be delivered in real time. For example, for some of the parking garage, like here, in the parking garage here today and last time, 2 weeks ago, there are some maintenance going on there. So I'm not sure how the parking system works. It seems like there is sensors above each of the parking lots showing one is red or green. So when certain areas is in maintenance, so we want to make sure that the number of availability reflect the real thing, the real time situation. That's all my comments for now. Thank you.
All right. I have a feeling that I'm a little bit in discordance with my fellow board members here in terms of, I actually think that the amount of information is appropriate. I use these types of signs constantly and I find them extremely helpful. I absolutely use them as I'm driving up and I can see a parking lot is full and I just keep on driving. I can absolutely see parking lot levels 2, 3, and 4 are full and I just drive right in and go right up to 4. I'm not slowed down. I'm not looking for spaces. I'm going, it moves the traffic along. I'm also in agreement. I will not park on a rooftop on a sunny day. I have my dog with me a lot and that would not be a good thing. So the information and the signage intent, I think, is really valuable. I would also say that I can see use cases where maybe the parking sign shows that and maybe it flashes over to say low parking and then flashes back and then goes to this and flash and just a slow flash, something like that, that would indicate, okay, maybe this parking lot's getting full. Or if it's full, the whole sign just goes full. Please proceed to the next one. Breast cancer awareness, any other colors, none of that is necessary here. These are parking signs and they need to remain as parking signs. The data, the information on these signs should be parking and that's it. Any sort of deviation from that is just not necessary and it's kind of not appropriate. So on that front, that's, I think, where I deviate a bit is I do appreciate the content and the intent of trying to move traffic along that you drive in and you can see it from somewhat of a distance. The reason that I wanted to go item by item is because each one of the buildings these things sits on is different. And so while I understand the intent of consistency, for a driver saying, oh, look, there's a parking space, and then your pattern recognition will find the other signs that look the same throughout the city. You go, there's another parking garage. Maybe it's one you hadn't seen before, but you're constantly parking on the Alma one. The Alma one's busy, and you go, oh, the Cowper, there's a garage that's exactly the same. And your pattern recognition will find that the signs being the same is helpful in that regard. It's really important for wayfinding with pattern recognition. I'm having a hard time with the argument that the one on the Civic Center needs to be so big. I agree with them on that. Maybe it's a half size. So then again, you're not like reformatting to lose the bottom panel. Maybe it's just a 50%, and that makes your, programming a bit easier. But again, there is that to contend with as well. I also have a significant issue with that none of these need to be blade signs with the exception of Alma. They could all be flat mounted. And the argument that you see it from farther away, you see it from approach. Yeah, I kind of buy it, except for the fact that all of the other parking signs where it says public parking, exit only, every single one of those is flat, right? And we can see those from a distance. And the Civic Center is back enough that you can sort of see it from that angle. I would also argue that the Civic Center probably needs to be a little higher. All the rest of them need to be a little lower, right? So it's really finding that sweet spot where as you approach, you can see these signs. So for me, I don't think the Bryant Street needs to be a blade sign. Flat is plenty. I drop it down as low as you can. Florence Street, drop it down as low as you can. And maybe it sits just right above that exit only placement sign. The sizing does not bother me on those ones, right? But as Peter said, they all tie together and they all matter. And every single building they sit on is different. So I understand the complications that you're dealing with here. The Civic Center needs to be lower. I mean, it needs to be, higher, smaller, flatter. Period. It's just too big. It's too in the way. It's too in your face. And it's only 3 levels. So the argument that this should have a sign exception just to match the others is kind of hard to pill to swallow. Webster and Cowper, no issues there. And then with the Alma and High Street, I have significant issues with the placement and the heights, right? Especially on High Street where that is so inappropriately placed in comparison to the entrance of that parking space. That's also a one-way street. You're not gonna need it in both directions. And I don't think you need it that far forward because again, as long as it's near to the entrance and consistently, all the other signs are right next to the entrance. So throwing this one 20 feet in front, there might be somebody slowing down at that point to be like, well, where's the entrance to the garage? Because every single other sign is right next to the garage entrance. So, and again, I do not feel that it needs to be a blade sign. As Peter showed with his example of the one on Sherman, that's a smaller sign. It's right at the entrance. It's flat and it gives you the information you need. So being able to communicate that effectively, efficiently, that's great. It just doesn't need to be 20 feet in front of the entrance and 20 feet high, potentially behind a tree canopy. So I think these just need a little more thought. My personal one exemption to this is the Alma Street parking sign. That being a blade feels appropriate. I drive that street constantly. I park in that parking garage every single time I come downtown. And that would be super helpful to see far away where the spaces are. You drive into the first floor and you already know, oh, there's no parking on first and second. I'll head straight up to 3. And again, coming from Alma, you're preventing backup of traffic onto Alma. So that's the one exception I can find. Overall, I think that this needs a bit more refinement. And I think that we really need to have good, solid findings for why these should be exempt from the signage. And of course, it's always form versus function in architecture, right? And this is signage, so leans more towards form, or excuse me, more towards function, less towards form. But we are a city that cares deeply about these items. And while we want to communicate information, it does need to match the city aesthetic, the building aesthetic, and the purpose as well. So finding that balance is tough. All right, I have no other thoughts. Peter, you got
If
your
I may
finger on the
just
button.
chime in on
Please.
that one, like, I absolutely agree that content is essential. Like I go to many garages all across, San Jose, San Francisco, anywhere else, where this content is so helpful. But it's not, like, I have not encountered a place where it's out on the street telling me what level has what parking. It's usually as you enter, you see what level has what parking. So especially the garages with spindly ramp going up, you just keep going to the level that has the parking, right? You don't decide on that from down the street. You decide on that as you're entering, which level has parking available. The sign from the street just needs to say, is parking available or not where is the parking. So I think that's the piece that I want to clarify, that I absolutely agree on this content. I just don't agree on where it is located relative to the building.
So actually, I want to make sure I understand. So your comment would be that this type of sign would be totally appropriate once you're inside the garage?
Or
and
like
then
where
just
Sherman Garage has it, like right at the
next to
entrance.
the entrance.
Yeah.
Okay,
right by
and so
the
that's where
entrance.
I would agree. I think outside the garage is important, just because there will be times as you drive up, you go, it looks a little, it's too full.
Yeah,
I'm
there's
gonna
only
skip it."
5 spaces available in a, 2,000 spot garage.
I'll go
I'm
to
not
count
gonna go hunt for that one, right? It's like,
Exactly.
yeah.
Okay, so just we're in agreement that having it near the entrance lower down is sort of more appropriate. Got it. Okay, understood. Thank you.
I'd like to try to present, there's 3 modifications to this that we could then let them get this approved, because we don't want to drag this around. We don't really need to see it again for example. So if we were to suggest 3 changes to this, maybe it's acceptable to them and to us. 1, the signs are dimensioned 20 inches wide by 80 inches tall. 2, the signs must be placed flat on the surface of the building. They cannot be blade signs, with the exception of the one along Alma. And thirdly, the signs have to be down at driver eye level from 10 or 20 feet away. In other words, down below the 12-foot height limit. When I look at the images, when I know these buildings, you could fairly easily accomplish that on all of them. That gives you the standardized dimension you want. And I think it would meet the functional requirements that you're requesting, which is this parking detailed information. But that will also let staff then process this with that guideline, and you guys can move forward with your project. It's a relatively easy change to make. It'll probably save the city some money. The signs are smaller. And I think the architectural impact on the building can be managed then when they're 20-inch by 80-inch signs maximum. So that's my suggestion to my colleagues and to the applicant.
I actually really support that idea. While 20 inches cutting it in half seems like it might be a problem, I think actually just with some simple graphical reorganization, you put level, on the top of the column, then you just have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And then you've got your normal parking, and then that little handicap symbol can be on the top of that column, right? Just narrowing up, I think is actually a very clever idea and a good way to sort of reduce some of this visual impact and sort of reduce some of the clutter. It would not allow for all of these extra signage things, but I don't think those are necessary anyway. So a 20-inch wide, I think, is a great solution. Thanks for that, Peter.
I sort of would like to see that explored, because it doesn't have to be a blade sign. It could be against a wall as you're entering from one side, so that when it's a narrow entry, it sits on a wall that's right there where you're entering, and you see it very clearly, and the letters are big enough to read immediately. I think that's worth exploring. I'm not so sure I like the blue color particularly, why it should be kind of neutral, especially in a garage that has brick. And then you have, if you have that blue color, doesn't work in the Bryan Street garage, I don't believe, which has a brick piers or a brick color piers anyhow. But how many, the other part that sort of bothers me here is we're discussing one graphic and some garages have a lot of other graphics right there. Shouldn't the view be to simplify the graphics as much as possible, especially now that you're providing a digital piece of information here that really tells you all of what you really need to know, except perhaps what's entry and what's exit, you know? That's the most critical, of course, in most of these garages. But I go along with that comment and to keep the information as simple as possible without all of the messaging.
If I may, through the chair.
Please.
So I would recommend seeing if we could hear from the applicant on their thoughts on that. I will say that staff has not evaluated these as wall signs. I do presume that as wall signs, they would probably be code compliant and wouldn't require board level review. So I think that's something that we would want to confirm before we approve the project, but
to hear from the applicant. Fair enough.
Yeah,
Before
let's
we
hear.
do, I would like to take a straw poll from the board here. Is everyone in agreement that all of these really should be flat mounted signs with the exception of the Alma? Can we just get a straw poll on that? You don't mind going down the line, yes or no?
Maybe.
Maybe. Okay. That's
So the maybe being that I agree they should be flat for all of them, even for Alma.
okay.
It's like this is a garage sign is important to be a blade. How many spots are available is not necessary to be a blade. So I'm kind of hesitant on even Alma doesn't
Even
need
on
to be a
Alma.
blade.
Okay. But Yingxi?
Yeah, I would agree what board member Adcock just mentioned.
Okay. So I'm of the opinion that all should be flat except for Alma. I do think Alma should be a blade, but it's my 2 cents. Peter, what do you think?
Yeah, I suppose if I thought I could get the votes, I'd say all should be flat, period.
Okay.
Just don't make a single exception, but
You
certainly.
might have the
7 out-
votes. It might be just me out here.
Well,
David, what do you think? Straw poll.
You know,
There's-
I have a little difference here that perhaps even the Civic Center garage, I bothered by it being a blade sign and actually you would see it coming from the ground up. It would be more useful,
So,
especially because in Civic Center, you have one exit and one entry and you really want to not go into an exit.
so your answer would be you support all of them being flat?
I think some flexibility, but visibility of the entry and exit is really important.
Okay. All right. And then to the applicant, I'd like to ask you to step back up to the podium and hear your thoughts briefly on flat versus blades and the 20 inches versus the 40 inches. So if you could speak to those 2 items specifically, please.
So in regards to the mounting method, whether they're flat or blade, I would advocate for blade signs being more visible to parkers because again, our whole premise and the whole design concept is to get people off to the streets and into a parking garage quicker. And if the sooner they identify that information, the quicker they make that decision to park in parking garage. I'm not from here. I park here several times. It's hard for me to find a parking garage, right? Because they are very well disguised. The architecture is nice and it blends in with the city. So it's hard as a tourist, as a visitor, to find parking. So, but having a sign that indicates, that draws my eye to something, that there is parking available, this is a parking garage, makes it easier. And I think if it's more visible as a blade, I think it's more effective from a messaging standpoint, and a graphic standpoint, they're flexible. Right, that's the beauty of these, as I've alluded to a couple of times now, is that the sizing of them will have to play with what the sizing looks like from a dimensional standpoint. What content can we provide? What sizing will look like? What is the overall aesthetic? Right, what by compressing the graphics into a smaller footprint. Let's take a look at it. And we can provide some options to you.
So indulge me for a moment. And again, this is sort of a personal opinion. Sorry, I'm trying to make sure I understand. If you had to choose between 20 inches wide and blade, which one's more important to you guys and to your proposed project here? If you had to give up one, which one would you give up first? The 40-inch dimension or the fact that they're blade? I understand I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, I would still go with blade. I would give it the
Okay.
size to stay with the blade. I think that the the information is critical enough, and for sustainability and all the green initiatives out there, we want to notify the public of parking availability before they get 10 feet on it, because that's not the decision, right? That's the oh crap decision. We did it last night downtown San Francisco. We're looking for a parking garage. Go, oh, there's a garage. That's not the reaction you want that creates accidents, congestion, things of that nature. Circle back around to find it. We want to notify the public well in advance. And you guys have the ability, since you are the city, to put those signs more strategically than individual parking garages in a more urban environment where they don't own the street corners. They don't have the building real estate to put those on. So I would still urge us to stick with the blade design and maybe shrink the size of it potentially. But I think they'd be less useful if they're flat against the building.
Great. Thank you for that information. Okay. I will not be making a motion on this, so I'll leave that to someone else. Claire has something. Go ahead.
I think it might be helpful to hear from Public Works Engineering and Transportation directly on whether this would be something that achieves what they want or not. Less about the feasibility of doing the sign and more about whether, if you make a recommendation along the lines of what was suggested, whether they'd need more time to explore whether that would work for them or if that would be acceptable to them.
Yep, please approach.
I really liked the suggestion at the beginning of your conversation about just getting approval and moving forward. I'm agnostic on much of the look and feel that is in your expertise. I just want the product to move forward and to have the spaces available. I believe I would like just the direction on the size and location is great to me. I conferred with Brittany, our project manager in Public Works, and there may be some savings in going smaller. I can certainly work on the design of the signage and the space available with this team, or the consultant team, and maybe bring that back to an ad hoc. I would like just direction on the infrastructure parts of it so that we can just keep moving forward. I would be happy to come back with adjustments about what the look and feel of that space availability looks like, because that was just, it's in my realm. We can work with the consultant to kind of conform within the infrastructure direction.
Can I ask a question as well?
Sure, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask one really quick first. So to put you under the same microscope I put him under, do you have any preference on blade versus flat and 20 inches versus 40 inches?
I do not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, please go ahead.
And thank you. For like the premise of this project, at least to me, you have plenty of signs like, you can see in the pictures of park garages here, right? I don't think that, in my understanding, that's not the problem you're trying to solve here. You're not trying to direct people to where the garages are. You're trying to tell them where the spots are available, right? So I think the advocacy for a blade sign to say, here's a garage, come on in, is not for you from Public Works side. That's not the premise of why you're trying to do this. You're trying to provide information on how many spaces are available, where, and within the garage. So it kind of goes back to where is it located? If you need an additional blinky sign to say, here's a garage, that's a different project that we're talking about, right? This is about, so many spaces on various levels, which, goes back to, it doesn't need to be a blade sign. It needs to be somewhere as you're approaching the garage, that information is available to you. You're not trying to flag down people to say, turn here for garage, because you already have plenty of signage across the city for that. And if that's additional signage is required for that, that's a separate project we're talking about, correct? Great.
I agree. I guess I would say further regarding the size of the sign, again, standardization is really valuable to me. So all the same makes a lot of sense, or a half size so that the design is just a half size. I'm open to either direction on that. And I think direction on the infrastructure is really important to me, so we can just keep it moving. And I'm, again, happy to come back on the specifics of the font size and what the look and feel of the actual messaging and kind of that part of it.
Okay, can I make a motion then? So I move we recommend approval of this project with the following changes. 1, signs be a maximum of 20 inches by 80 inches. 2, the signs all be mounted flat on the surface of the building. 3, the signs be no more than 12 feet above the ground. To the top.
I would like to make a friendly amendment
We
that
need a second first, right?
oh, did we?
Second.
I would like to try and vouch for my friendly amendment to make a blade on Alma, but I do not think I have the support here. I think that all 4 of you are against it, but I'd like to just put on the record, I
Well-
think that Alma should be a blade sign.
I'm not opposed to that if the majority wants to do it.
Do I have any support?
I think the 12 feet to the top versus blade would not work, right? Because it's an 80-inch tall. And 20, unless there's space on the sidewalk, because you're
Fair
now,
Well, the
point.
blade sign would have to be higher on Alma.
Yeah, the
to be
blade sign would have
practical
to be
even.
higher anyway.
Mhm.
What is the code requirement for the blade sign is 3 or 5 square feet, something like
3
that?
square feet.
Yeah, so, yeah, I'm sorry, we're creating a precedent for, I don't think that makes a big difference on the goal of this project. So,
I'm concerned about your vertical dimension here.
That 12 feet maximum?
12 feet maximum is okay. Yeah, I would agree with that, but they should determine the actual
well, I just said maximum. If
maximum.
it's 20 by 80 maximum.
Okay,
they can,
fine.
They
Yeah,
can
yeah,
design
yeah.
it how they want,
Maximum, yeah.
but I think that gives them the ability to do the graphics they need. If they want to standardize it, 80 can be everywhere. Clearly, the specific garage right here could be smaller, but I get it. He doesn't want to make this a software project forever, right? So that's my motion, and it's been seconded, right? And
yeah, seconded.
I'm sorry, Kendra,
Okay,
but I don't. think
friendly
that's
amendment
gonna-
failed. That's fair enough. I wanted to at least try and push for it at least one more time. Okay, we'll call for a vote.
Sorry, can we say no more than 12 inches in to the top? So we're clear.
I'm sorry, say,
Yeah, appreciate, actually, let's all review what's on the screen first, and then we will call for a vote. So
oh, wait a
recommend,
second, yeah, so.
Yeah. Recommend that the Director of
So
Planning and
no,
Development Services approve the projects based on the findings of attachment B and subject to conditions. Attachment C, number 1, signs are 20 inches wide by 80 inches tall,
We said a maximum of.
are a maximum of, yeah.
Yeah, let's give the designer choice to make it what they want, just no more than that. Flat wall signs,
Flat mounted.
flat mounted wall signs, yeah. Maximum of 12 feet to the top of the sign.
Yeah, and it's not need to be, it shall be maximum of 12 feet high to top of sign. Thank you. You can take out the 2s for grammatical consistency. Thank you.
So to my colleagues, this text is the
You
motion.
know, I just want to ask a question because
Maximum 12 feet high to the
If-
top of
if-
the sign.
if you take the Florence Street, for example, and the opening is going column to column, you're going to have a sign that sits where on a project like that? On the column itself?
I would think you'd put the sign on one of these columns, yeah.
Everybody agreed to that idea?
That's sort of the intent, although they have to figure that out.
Uh-huh.
It's,
And on the Civic Center garage, it would fit in the column that's in the middle?
in the middle or on the right-hand side where you're turning in, either way.
Okay.
But 80 inches is certainly a reasonable height.
Okay, and then so in the Alma Street garage, it would be where?
Well, the one on Alma is just going to be next to the entrance, probably on the right side. But there's plenty of wall space for it.
Okay, just want to
And
make sure.
they could orient it horizontally if they wanted to get into more graphics too.
Well, that's what I was wondering, if they would want, if vertically or horizontally.
Well, I'll call to my colleagues' attention that this motion does not stipulate whether they're vertical or horizontal signs, and there's no reason it should, in my opinion.
Okay, good.
This
Fine.
motion does not stipulate an ad hoc committee or any further ARB review, and I believe there's no reason it should.
Good.
Just very clearly,
Okay.
leaving it back to staff, to Public Works to make this happen.
Excellent.
Does there need to be any stipulation that the graphics be similar in theme to what's been presented?
Well,
What I mean by
would-
that is like if they suddenly come back and all the signs are bright yellow, right? Like.
so I mean, I keep thinking this is a real classic case example of sign ordinances because sign ordinances are supposed to be, it's inherent that they're neutral about content. We're not regulating the content whatsoever. This is a classic example of where the content can be anything. It's a digital sign. But I agree with Board Member Hirsch's statement that the blue doesn't match with the building, but blue is content, and that's up to them. So was the font, the size, the lettering. Let the engineers figure out what's the appropriate letter size,
Yeah,
color,
and
everything.
the sign program itself to make it visible, you want it to not blend with the building, right?
Yeah, I would agree
I
with
don't
that.
know. I mean, we're just looking at, what do you?
I was just going to note that while they've expressed that this does give flexibility, I will say that planning actually, we review content, not necessarily to approve or disapprove content. Well, how do I say this? We do require that the details of what is going to be printed on a sign go through planning review. So if they want to do additional things, it does require planning review of
That's helpful
that
to know.
detail. Whether that's done through simply an over-the-counter architecture review, just double checking that, you know, it seems appropriate. Generally, we would be looking for it to be, you know, public benefit related and really focused on more of the parking. You know, we had heard from the applicant that there was some, you know, interest in maybe doing, you know, colors for 4th of July or something like that. But if they're looking at other content that they're looking to add, I think we would really be looking at that and whether it's appropriate and makes sense for the sign, especially if it was something like weather that they plan to have all the time on there versus something that was just like a one-day thing.
On that note, I would also just gently argue that, you know, changing things for 4th of July and things like that will actually be, again, messing with people's pattern recognition and wayfinding. So I would discourage that. If it's a sign, leave it as a sign. As much as I love the concept of like making it pink for Breast Cancer Awareness Day or something like that, it's again, getting beyond the scope. Those can be potentially, you know, subject matter that's not related to parking. So if it's not related to parking, it should not be an item up for discussion. My 2 cents on that. So on that note, Peter's got this motion put forward. Board Member Adcock has seconded, and we have our motion on the table, actually on the screen, I guess I should say. If there's no further objections or friendly amendments, I will call for a vote.
Board Member Adcock,
Yes.
Board Member Bolte,
Yes.
Board Member Hirsch,
Yes.
Vice Chair Chen,
Yes.
Chair Rosenberg,
Yes.
motion carries 5-0.
All right, to the applicant, thank you guys very much for your time and efforts on this. We appreciate it and, you know, happy to see this moving forward. Okay. All right, final agenda item we have is nothing. We have no minutes for this one. So if there are, yeah, it's just questions, comments, announcements, anything else from any member of the board or staff?
I did want to note that that 4075 El Camino project that's going before council next Monday, is there a desire of the board to have a representative to attend that meeting? I do know just based on the track record that the board, the ARB, should I say, had recommended approval where the PTC had a differing opinion. So
Can you remind me what the project is? Not just the address. I can't pull a project for that address right now. I don't know why.
yeah, so that would be the Palo Alto Commons. So that is a assisted living facility.
That's in downtown?
It's El Camino Way.
El Camino Way.
Off of El
Oh,
Camino.
got it. Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Everyone else remember it? Do we feel that we need to send a representative to that city council meeting or sit in on the Zoom?
No.
I'm okay with it. Unless there's some need for me to be there as chair. I think we can say that we're,
I think the chair should always be present. If the PTC disagrees with us, then we need to represent our view. If I remember right, there was a lot of stuff about air conditioning
parking.
noises in the back and
in the parking.
parking
Okay.
things. So I think the
Guess I'm
chair
adding that to my
should-
calendar.
should stand up for the review.
Monday, May 5th.
It is tentatively scheduled for 10 PM.
Oof, okay. I'll do my best. I don't know, I'll definitely be Zooming. My children will be in bed and asleep by then, so city council meeting, okay, I've got that in my calendar, so May 5th, 10 PM. All right,
I'll coordinate the meeting details with the
Appreciate
project
it.
planner and you.
she sent me the link, that's always also helpful, so I don't have to hunt around for it. Appreciate that. All right, and with that,
I just have one question,
Go ahead.
actually. For the work plan, I think we were gonna split off the projects to, we did not get that list yet, did we?
that list has not been emailed out yet, but we did take notes in our last meeting.
Yes, we did. That list has not been sent out, but it shall be sent out this week.
Okay, great. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for the helpful reminder. And then so that we could all be prepared with our comments for our own specific portion for the next meeting would be fantastic. More to do, more homework. All right, and with that, we're adjourned. Thank you, guys.